I can see many who have not given mains. How many of you have given mains? I can make out. So today is our discussion regarding the question paper. Obviously, it will be more about a general idea how we should have dealt the particular questions. As you can see, if you have not seen the question paper is mostly above average type. Okay, it is not the 2010 to 2013 question paper of PABAD. Okay, obviously the question paper is little mellowed down with respect to the standard of the previous year's question paper. Okay, so obviously this question paper would have required a little bit of factual knowledge. Okay, it is less analytical, more factual in nature. Paper 1 is usual. Okay, the important areas more or less that everybody studies, it is covered in the paper 1. Okay, he is getting the question paper within some time. Okay, so anybody or people who have written mains, okay, did you face problem writing any of the questions in paper 1? You kindly sit down. Okay. The analytical part added to that. Okay. Anything else? No other question? Other questions were predictable. You have written mains? No. Who else has written? तुम ही लिखे हो सिर्फ? तुम ही लिखे हो ना? कोई doubt first paper में? The question which you could not understand. Okay. So let us see. Okay, if we see the question paper, first paper. Okay. So let me give you a brief of the paper itself. Okay. So part A is, okay, generally if we see the paper 1, so there are, normally you can say 12 units. Okay. So generally part A of the paper 1, okay, if you see the trend, this part has 5 questions, compulsory. So this portion generally covers your unit 1, 2, 3, 4, and obviously some questions from 6, 7, 8. Okay, if you'll see the question paper, past question papers also, you'll find that this part generally covers these units. Okay, maybe direct, maybe implied. Okay, if you break it, then if we see 2010 to 13, obviously the nature of question was highly interlinked. All of them were linked together and a question was framed. But this year what they have done, okay, they have started right from the Wilson itself. Okay, that means if you take the syllabus, okay, and you see the first unit, so the major portion of the first unit is the Wilson's vision of public administration and the evolution of public administration. These are two important parts. Okay, so they have started from there. Okay, let us say first question was about, okay, we'll start with the question. Okay, so when you write a 10 marker question, okay, obviously the breakup of the marks is also predictable, 20, 15, 15, 10, 10, 10. If you write a 10 marker question, how do you write it? Okay, usually it is 100 or 150 words. Okay, so if you have to break this 150 words, let us say, usually if we are writing a 10 marker, then let us say I break it into 4 parts. Okay, the average marks that you can score in this is 4 to 6 maximum. Okay, not more than that. Okay, that means 60% obviously is very high. You cannot score. But if you are scoring, if you are writing very well, then somewhere 4.5 to 5.5 marks. Okay, at least 4 to 5 marks you can get through or for a good answer. Okay, but what will be a good answer? So I break it generally into 4 parts. Okay, one part is obviously the question has been asked. So the first part will be the context of the question. Okay, because if you think of Wilson, then Wilson also has, obviously Wilson's whatever vision he shared with the evolution of public administration, it has a specific context. You cannot understand Wilson without the context. Okay, even if you talk about science, then Taylor also talked about science of management. Fayol also talked about science of administration. Gulick and Arvik also talked about science of administration. What is the difference between Wilson and all of them? Okay. So context is what makes the content of your answer very clear. Okay, that this is going to be the framework. So if I break it, so first part will be mostly related to context, and if you have to write 150 words, so generally, okay, this might comprise of 25 to 30 words. Because your body, the main part of the answer must at least be 75 words. Okay. So somewhere you have consumed 100 words for the main body and the context. Okay. Then if the question is of very generic nature, then you can use some current or case study. Case study here would not be elaborate case study. Obviously it will be a reference of a policy or a program, or maybe the input from paper 2 in the paper 1. Okay. Then finally, what you can call is the conclusion. Okay. Like if it is asked that whether you agree or not, okay, or whether you have some, you can say, specific inputs to give or provide, maybe a way forward to the answer, whatever. So if you divide it, okay, generally these are the parts of the answer. Okay, and if you write well, obviously this part will be comprising of more marks, somewhere 4 to 5 marks. Okay, let us say 2.5, and this whole will be 2.5. Okay, this is not of much relevance in a 10-mark question. But if it is 20 or 30 or 35 marks, then obviously this has a much relevance. Okay, why? Because most of the things you will convey here itself. So conclusion would be more referential or tangential here, rather than forming the main part of the answer. Okay. So this is one way how we can approach the 10 marker. Let us take the first question. So the first question, I'll read it. Okay. First question is saying, okay, I'll take few symbolic questions from various parts. Okay. First question is saying, even after 130 years of its publication, Woodrow Wilson's essay, The Study of Administration, continues to have a great relevance even today. Comment. Okay. What does comment means? Okay, if you encounter this term comment, you have to agree, disagree, what you have to do. Both pros and cons. There can be a via media also. There can be a middle path also. Meaning comment. Okay, so you take the statement. Okay, what you do? It is a very simple method. Okay, whatever statement is written. Okay, you first write the context. From the context or within the context, you highlight 2-3 dimensions. Okay. Take each and every dimension in your answer. That is the comment. So you can take the positive, you can take the negative, you can take a neutral stand, or you may take or link it to some other aspect within the context itself. Okay. From there, point by point, you can take it and write it in your content. Because comment, generally we perceive pros and cons, but how do you go about pros and cons? Okay, it has to be a mix of both. Okay, you cannot separately praise Wilson and then criticize Wilson. How is it possible? Okay, the analytical aspect of the answer will reduce. So you take it, okay, let us say Wilson. So whether Wilson can be considered as father of PUBAD? Okay. So let us say his relevance is, or relevance lies in the context. Now, the context of the Wilson was, let us say, the spoil system. Okay. And also the various political and social changes which were going on. Okay, like political changes, what political changes were going on? Okay. Okay. Most of the corruption visible in the American society at the municipal level. Okay, municipal corruption was very high. Okay, and at the same time, you can say it was also an era of industrialization. Okay, the government's role was changing. Okay, in what way it was changing? Basically, American. European countries were much more stabilized compared to the American. Plus, America had a cosmopolitan culture. Okay, immigrants, people from various other cultures. Okay, so what happened? And also racial discrimination was there, black versus white, ethnic conflicts. Okay, so he specifically identified this as the context, that there are cultural and social changes influenced by the economic changes. Okay. Okay, so as the economic transition is taking place, it is creating or it is impacting the socio-cultural change, which requires a more or a sharper political acumen to resolve it. Okay, so he's not basically criticizing the politics. He's saying that the politics is not compatible with this kind of change, because this politics is not letting the administration do its role. So it is not just the spoil system. Okay, the spoil system was only symptomatic of the larger problem of the American administration or the American governance. Okay, so he brings this as the context. Okay, based on this context, now you can understand the relevance of his essay. So he highlights various aspects. Okay, so first you highlight this as the context, that why he wanted this, what was happening. Municipal corruption was very high. Okay, and number of services which were desired by the people was, or they were not getting the services, the kind of services they wanted. Okay, so where is the malady, where is the malaise? He wants to know that. So he identifies that this malady or the problem lies in the administration, and obviously it is, the problem is coming from the politics, but actually it is the administration which can bring the cure to this problem. So based on this logic, he tries to understand the administration. Okay, he also goes for a comparative study because he assumes that the American political system is not that stable as the European political system. The administration in America or the US, okay, is much more dominated by the public opinion, okay, the multitudinous monarch which he refers. Okay, whereas the same is not true in the European context. Why it is not true in the European context? UK was a democracy. Most of them were turning into benevolent monarchies and then into democracy. Okay, there are two views regarding. So even the Wilson was somewhere influenced by the Francophone view of public administration, the French Germanic tradition of public administration. Even though he was coming from a democratic value system, okay, but he preferred the French Germanic tradition of public administration rather than the Anglophone tradition. Okay, and that is why he was inspired by that. Okay, so he assumed there is a stable administration because it is performing. Even if they want to colonize, they colonized well. So it was not the motive. It was basically the utility of the system. Okay, the purpose may be defined by the politics. So he's saying in that regard, if the politics defines a goal there and the administration is inspiring or working towards that goal, then administration is able to achieve it there, but not here. Okay. So he is giving a reference that because the nature of the politics, the democracy does not let the administration do that task. So he wanted to reform whatever the statements he gave, getting harder to run a constitution than to frame one. Okay, or we need, like he's saying, the knowledge of sharpening the knife, but not necessarily the intention of the sharpening the knife. So, okay, likewise he tries to understand that, okay, how we are going to bring this reform here. So if you have discussed this context, obviously 25-30 words you have to discuss it very briefly. That, okay, these were the political, socio-cultural changes taking place. Okay. The reasons for the corruption, mostly the spoil system. Corruption was visible at the municipal level. Okay, number of services. Okay, number of or the efficiency of administration hampered by the political nature of the democracy, ethnic conflicts, this, and all that you can create. Now from here, then the next you can take this. Okay, that why or what were the specifics of the Wilson's essay. Okay, so you can highlight certain things, what he talked about, not the obviously entire thing. He talked about science. Okay, and why science? Because science would give a rational character to the functioning of administration. You don't need to discuss in detail what does science mean. So obviously he was influenced by, or he wanted to promote the rational character of administration because he assumed that the politics and the society is basically non-rational in nature. Okay. Second aspect was that, what he wanted? Okay. He wanted a comparative study of administration, obviously borrowing the techniques, but also at the same time he understood that it has to be filtered through the cultural lens of the democracy. So he was well aware that democracy has its own requirements. Okay. Third aspect of Wilson is, okay, that he was reformative in nature. Okay, he was a reformist. Okay, though he can be considered as idealist, but he was also reformist in nature. Okay, So he wanted to reform the American administration for the purpose of providing, or you can say for the purpose of fulfilling the goals of politics. Okay. So that way, what he is doing, he was trying to provide or destructure the American administration. Destructuring means what? The departmental form of administration which exists. He wanted to provide autonomy to the administration. So taking away the administration from the departmental structure, okay, and giving it autonomy of almost parallel to the powers of the state. Okay, that can be the criticism of Wilson. Okay, that he identified that administration would emerge or act like the fourth organ of the state. Okay, this is where he becomes radical. Okay, which is known as the dichotomy. Okay, but in 1893 he retreats from the dichotomy himself. Okay, okay. So you can bring these specific aspects here, then analyze them. Okay, that how that science of administration is still relevant. Today also, when we talk about the reforms in administration, let's say India, okay, if you are innovative, you can use the example from India and even the global perspectives on the reform like new public management, so, or e-governance. So today also when we are talking about the reform in administration, where are we moving towards? Increasing the rationality of administration. Okay, this is what he said. Okay. Today also the major problems with the functioning or the efficiency of administration is the corruption in administration. Okay. So what is the best way to tackle the corruption? To develop or to strengthen the procedural aspects of the administration, the same thing Wilson talked about. Increase the ethical component of the administration, ethics in governance, today we are studying. Okay, so how Wilson says ethical aspects of administration? Where is he talking about the ethical nature of administration? No, that's correct, but
he was targeting the spoil system, sir. In that spoil system, it was a kind of
patronage. He wanted to eliminate the patronage or the political interference, but not the political intervention. Okay. So very much the values of democracy will guide the administration, but not the values of the politics. Okay, so no doubt he's talking about an ethical administration. Today we are saying ethics in governance. So how do we enforce ethics in governance? By better performance appraisal, okay, by let us say incentive system, okay, or by evaluating standardizing the tasks, say Uttam model and so many things we are talking about today. So today when we talk about ethics in governance, so the influences are purely visible in the Wilson's idea of this administration or study of administration. Okay. Third aspect, comparative studies. Okay. So 1960s, if you see the development of comparative studies, okay, no doubt by 1980s the demise of CPA is also visible, but again the resurgence of CPA around 1990s. Okay. If you have heard the name of Jun, the theorist, J-U-N, okay, and New Public Administration 3 or NPA 2, okay, none of them neglect the role of the comparative public administration, even though they have not discussed in detail. But you see, post 1990s, your DA, Development Administration, okay, how it evolved. Many of them have not studied them. Okay, how DA evolved post 1990s. Development Administration was about, you are bringing the comparative perspective in development or not? It was a subspecies of the CPA, comparative public administration. So when we talk about the DA and the emerging trends in development administration, okay, that is obviously inspired by the Wilson's idea, okay, of borrowing the knowledge from one and then contextualizing that knowledge into the other. Also, you can say today, when we believe that administration is one of the important pillars of social transformation, that is what Wilson is also saying. Therefore, administration is depoliticized, it is left alone, obviously not absolutely, but if it is enjoying it, autonomy in terms of policies and programs, then definitely it is going to create a better governance. So today also the stress is on that. Okay, the only drawback of the Wilson is what? That he does not theoretically conceptualize it. He only visualizes it. Okay, but does not provide the concrete structure that how, or the skeleton structure how it is going to be done. Okay. So you can say that yes, it is still relevant, but what today, okay, 1990s or 2000 or post-globalization, the nature of administration is not as visualized by the Wilson. The nature of administration is more complicated. What are the security issues? Okay, internal security, external security, disasters have become very important area. Gender or gender empowerment, gender issues, subaltern issues. Okay, poverty, hunger, malnutrition, and so many things. So that probably was not, or that is not the aim of science of administration. So today if we talk about science of administration, we are more concerned with the structure of administration, not the value system of administration. Okay. So if the science leads to the process of dehumanization, then probably he is not relevant. Okay. So today we are focusing on our humanization of civil services. Okay. So in that regard, we can counter him also. That okay, what he talks about specifically may not be relevant today much. Okay. If you talk about comparative study, yes, globalization. Okay. In fact, globalization itself is a big force. Okay. There is no need for a separate theoretical study of comparative public administration. It itself is transforming culturally, politically, socially. People are embracing new values themselves. Okay. So you cannot theorize, you can just theoretically understand the globalization, but you cannot create a predictable framework of globalization. Impossible. Okay. So you can say that Wilson, not necessarily, may be totally relevant today. His retreat or the dichotomy perspective was challenged by the public policy approach. Okay. Initially, public policy approach comes, it says that, okay, we must study public policy in public administration. But why should we study? Because the policy is basically the part of the political system. Okay. So Harold Lasswell and David Lerner, who encountered the dichotomy. Okay. So they are saying that the policy, we must study a policy science. Because politics may be influenced by philosophy, but administration is more influenced by rationality. Okay, so that public policy approach which became dominant post-1960, that itself is a criticism of Wilson's dichotomy. New public administration is a criticism of Wilson's dichotomy. Okay, NPA movement. Okay. So likewise you can say, you can bring both the aspects, so bring some specifics, evaluate its role today, okay, and then counter it. But don't counter it without the names. Don't counter it without specific themes in public administration. Don't bring a very general criticism of Wilson. Because in general we can criticize him. But what specifically? Because 10 markers, you can score very well if your answer remains little factual. Because there is no scope of much analysis. So use the theorist and then analyze. Okay. So if it is a long answer, then you can bring your own ideas. Okay. But here what is specific, what is more important, that we must highlight the lacuna, the limitations in the Wilson's vision, okay, and its applicability today. Okay. If you want, if you have still time and the space, then you can conclude it. That why Wilson's call for a science of administration led to the emergence of public administration, and you see the relevance of discipline of PubAd, is it not? So that is the biggest relevance of Wilson. If Wilson had not conceived of a separate study of public administration, there would have been no subject of public administration. That is the biggest relevance of Wilson. So you can finish it off by saying that, okay, that public administration, as Donham says, that the existence of the civilization itself is dependent on the public administration. Or Odwit, public administration is a moral act, and public administration is a moral agent. You can find out, you can highlight the utility of administration and the contribution of Wilson in the evolution of that administration. So if you logically correlate maybe 150 words, maybe it will extend to 160, not more than that. So plus minus 20, 25 words is not a big problem in UPSC if you have the space. Okay. But I think you got only 2 pages, most of the questions. Okay. So obviously 150 words you will finish. You may reduce the content in terms of analysis, because here it is more important to bring the factual aspects. Okay. So maybe 10 markers you can write this way. Okay, let's say another question. What is distinctive about the classical and human relations school of administration in their complementarity to each other? Okay. Classical and human relations approach. Okay, why do we use the term classical? Right. They are the base. Okay, they are evergreen. They are like Dilip Kumars and Raj Kumars. Okay, so it is obvious that the classical approach may not be the state of art, but its relevance cannot be denied as far as the understanding of PubEd is concerned. Okay, so classical approach is now what will constitute the classical approach, which theories will come under the classical approach. Wilson is also classical. Okay, what you can do, you can see, because this will, if you write each and every name, obviously it is very difficult to write. Okay, so you can start with the basic, first the context of the classical approach. What is the context of classical approach? The influence of positivism. Okay, 1940s. Okay, or if you take even this from here, midway somewhere, Follett is also included in that. Fine. So if you are saying classical, the first thing will be a context. So here itself what you do, it's better to discuss both, the classical and the human relations. Because when you are discussing the classical becomes the context of the human relations approach. So rather than writing it separately, okay, you can discuss it here itself. The classical approach was the outcome of positivism. Okay. The influence of positivism on the social sciences. So you cannot deny that these people were somewhere trying to develop or evolve public administration on the lines of the natural sciences. Okay, so that was the biggest inspiration they had, like L.D. White. Okay, so if you want, you can start the context of classical with the L.D. White statement that the first authentic textbook in public administration which talks about the study of PubEd starts with the base of management rather than foundation of law. So it gives it a rational character to the study of public administration. Okay. Wilson talks about science of administration. Goodenough talks about separation of politics and administration. So obviously see the context of entire classical approach or the later the principles which we developed, they were all influenced by this idea of positivism. Okay. So methodologically the classical were positivists. Okay. In terms of purpose, they might be different because Goodenough and Wilson more concerned with the political context of administration. Okay. White, Willoughby, Gulick, Urwick, Taylor more concerned with the economic or the industrial context of the administration. Okay. But methodologically all were similar. That is the positivism. That is the link between them. Okay. So you can start with the positivism. Okay. So it is very simple to analyze that. Okay, classical approach basically inspired to look for a rational, or they focus on two aspects. One, the structure, other the function. Okay, so the conception of a structure or an ideal structure of organization led to the emergence or the growth of number of principles. Okay, whether Gulick, Urwick, Fayol, Taylor, whatever. Okay, some viewed the organization at the lower level like Taylor, others viewed it at the higher levels or more concerned with the management process than the technique of implementation. Okay, so now you are analyzing the classical. Okay, so this limitations of the classical will lead to now human relations. So how human relations approach emerged? When the Taylorism became a dominant force, okay, for industrial development, or it was accepted globally that it is one of the biggest change which will be introduced into the industrial management process. Okay. At that very moment, there were a number of dysfunctionalities of Taylorism. Okay. So Robert Hoxie and whatever the investigation was carried out, okay, by the Senate, okay, a committee of the American Parliament. So that came with the conclusion that, okay, no, Taylorism has been detrimental to the human beings, or it is exploitative in nature, it is somewhere promoting the exploitative nature of the capitalism. Okay. So then the context of human relation emerges, because obviously the industrial management cannot exist in vacuum. So somebody had to intervene. Okay, and that was obviously the Elton Mayo and some people, Rothles, Berger, Dixon, North, Whitehead, number of people who were associated, George Pennock. Okay, they were all parallelly conducting certain experiments. So human relation management emerges. So you can logically now analyze the HRM. HRM was more about the study of organization with taking humans as the factor. Okay. But both were exploitative. Okay. Finally, you can link them. Because one wanted to improve the structure, the other wanted to improve the human being, but ultimately as a factor of production. You wanted to socially and psychologically understand the human beings for what? For increasing the productivity. You never wanted the emancipation of the human beings. The rest periods were given by the Mayo, recommended by the Mayo. They were not basically the rest period understanding the needs of the human beings. It was more concerned with the performance of those human beings working in the organization. Okay. So if you see, they were complementary in nature. Why? The productivity which reduced because of the excessive exploitation existent in the classical approaches. Okay, that productivity was increased by the socio-psychological approach of the human relations movement. Yeah, you can say. But it no way led to the emancipation of human being. Yes, behavioralism later, it explored other dimensions of. So the complementary nature was what? It was not saying that, okay, it brought back the humanistic perspective into the organization. No. Okay. Rosenblum has given a very famous statement that human relations movement brought back humans into the organization. So it can be understood in two ways. Brought back humans, that now human became an important ingredient of the organization. And the other, that humans were what? Now again humans became a factor of production in the organization. Okay. So you can say that human relations movement, even though it focused on social psychological approaches and the benefits that organization must provide to its members, okay, it was eventually another tool of complementing the shortfall of productivity by the classical or the other approaches. So this is the basic logic. So this question is not saying that it is only that HRM improved the life of the humans. No. Okay. Right from Taylor to Simon, everybody can be criticized for being somewhere pro-production oriented. Unless you go to the postmodern theories, till that time you can criticize all of them, because all of them had the common undercurrent of increasing the productivity in the organization. Okay. So till the time you tried, or as a theorist you tried to fulfill the social or the humanistic needs of human beings, not necessarily related to the organization, like Argyris. Okay. Argyris is more humanist perspective. Peter Senge is more humanist perspective. Peter Drucker is more humanist perspective. Okay. Their concern was not merely the productivity. Okay. So if you want, you can include them also, because human relations management is not just the Mayo. Okay. Human relations management also includes the new human relations management. So if you see the parallel evolution, the classical becomes the neoclassical, and the human relations becomes the new human relations, but the common undercurrent never goes. Okay. Their focus is the industrial management and not the emancipation of humans. Maybe Maslow and Argyris are more idealist when they say self-actualization can be a need which can be fulfilled by the organization. No. That was not the conception of other theorists. They are not viewing organization as a means to the realization of self-actualization. Okay. So first it is the organizational goal, and through the organizational goal how you can link your goal. Okay. So you can analyze, because the word analyze is very important here. It is not simply a comparison of HRM and the classical approach. So if you further analyze, then you can take it or link it to the emergence of the new classical approaches and the emergence of the new human relations movement. So the utility of facts comes in the short questions. Okay, because you may not give your own opinion. It is not your opinion which is much required here. Okay, you can just use them, quote them, and convey your idea. Okay. So you can finally conclude that, okay, yes, no doubt organizations are purposeful entities, they are artificial entities, okay, and they are in no way, even though we talk about the ideal notion of social organizations, but organizations are no way, they are basically economic entities. So ultimately, whosoever joins or who becomes the member of the organization has to serve the purpose of the organization. So it is, or it becomes, or the modern organizations were much more intelligent than the classical organizations to understand that how the organization can fulfill its needs and simultaneously fulfill the needs of its employees. Now the needs may be diverse as social, cultural, intellectual, growth needs, qualitative needs, spiritual needs, whatever. Okay, then you can conclude finally that here we find that HRM and the classical approach do not or not able to fulfill the desired needs of the organization. So there is a need for a behavioral or post-behavioral approach to fulfill that. So we cannot say that entire organizational theory of PubEd can be fulfilled by the classical and the HRM. No. Okay, they need to be improved upon, or they have been improved upon by the postmodernist and the post-behavioral theories. Okay, so that aspect will come here, because it is not just classical and HRM which fulfills the entire organizational or theoretical needs of the organization. So if you don't bring this perspective, then the analysis is weak. Okay. Else it is fine. You can simply compare it. So,
somehow you can add postmodernist.
definitely, why not? That is what which has actually overcome the limitations of both. Situational models, okay, treating or understanding the organization as a combination of culture, social, emotional, and other aspects. Humanistic phenomenological model. Okay. That is an improvement over all this. Mohit Bhattacharya has written about it. Okay, this is viewing organization as a society. Okay, microcosm of the society is the organization. Your NPA 3. Okay, definition of NPA 3 can also be used, but you can not write obviously everything here. So NPA 3 is defining the organization as a socially embedded process. The socially embedded process means how? It is simply saying it is a reflection of society. Okay. It has cultural elements, it has emotional elements, it has economic elements, it has political elements, it has other types of elements. Diversity is visible in the society. As it is visible in the organization, as it is visible in the society, it is visible in the organization. Okay. There has been a case study also in India, where organizations like Hamdard and ITC were studied. So certain organizations employ people from certain cultural background only. So initially they were very successful, but over the time they became unsuccessful. Because product specification also demands what? A variety or varied cultural understanding. You cannot understand the requirements of the changes to be brought in a particular product or service unless you have an understanding of diversity of cultures. Fine. So if you have analyzed, but here it was not necessary to write all that, but you can use if you are writing a long answer. Okay. Third question, let us briefly. Conflict is the appearance of differences, difference of opinions and of interest. Okay. Follett's statement. So Follett is saying conflict is, okay. So you can bring first briefly the context that Follett was a classical theorist, okay, but was basically classical in form but postmodern in spirit. That was the Follett. Prophet of management, as the Peter Drucker calls. The prophet gives the spiritual status to Follett. Okay. So it is obvious that Follett, even though chronologically she belonged to that particular era, okay, her ideas were very different and very well advanced over those eras. Okay. So in general, the conflict was viewed by the classical approaches as detrimental to the organization. So Gulick and Ervik, if you see, Gulick and Ervik, who talks about the design of organization as the primary aspect of understanding the organization. So design is what? Design they are saying is crucial to the structure or existence of organization. What does it mean? No, design means what? They are viewing organization as a designing process. No, designing is, yes, designing considers that, okay, nothing in the organization will be spontaneous. The organization does not comprise of spontaneity. How is it possible? But you can design the structure, the procedure, rule, you cannot design the human being. You cannot design his behavior and psychology. How is it possible? So logic is what? See, they are viewing it as designing process. That means they consider that anything which is of emotional or spontaneous nature should not be or will be detrimental to the organization. So this brings the logic that all the theorists viewing conflict, okay, Weber, he views the conflict as what? To be resolved through the rules, regulations, to be settled by law, by superior subordinate relationship. Okay. Or a structure of domination will be created on law and rationality and it will resolve. So for them, the conflict was detrimental, whereas Follett comes with the idea that conflict is not detrimental to the organization. Okay. There is a tension theory given by Cleveland. So tension theory says that it is necessary to bring deliberate tensions in the organizations so that the hidden energy, the unspent energy comes out. Okay. The same concept can be used with the, or by linking it to the cybernetic model. Okay. Feedback. Okay. Or what we say entropy, the systems approach. Okay. So according to them, the entropy of the organization will be high. It will be unstable, okay, because the energy, or it has not stabilized its energy. Okay, so Follett using the same logic that what is conflict? Conflict is functional for the organization. How it is functional? Because the way we are tackling the conflict is not correct. Okay, so we need to tackle the conflict in a different way. So she's saying that there are various elements which may come in conflict with each other, and why they will come in conflict with each other. Maybe at the ideological level and also at the substantive level. Okay. One group and the other group, the interests may differ. Management and the worker, the interests may differ. Okay. Now imagine Taylor. Taylor is talking about how to resolve the conflict through mental revolution. But in the mental revolution, there is no scope of voicing your opinion, because it presumes that once you have increased the surplus, okay, there is no conflict. That conflict is only over the ownership or the benefit of the surplus, nothing else. Okay, but she is not. She is highlighting. She is taking forward the idea of the conflict visualized by the classical approaches. So she is saying the conflict can be of substantive nature, that is the interest, or it can be at the ideological level also, that is the opinion. Okay. So if you see this statement, what does it mean? That for her, conflict is not a big issue in the organization. That is the logic of this statement. That is the appearance of differences of opinion and interests. So she is simply assuming that conflict is what? Conflict is just an event. Conflict is just a part of the process of the organization. So she is not treating it as something assumed by monstrous, assumed by the classical approaches. That is the meaning of this. So if you have referred to her paper, Dynamic Administration or Creative Experience. Okay, so in creative experience, she is talking about that how these situations, okay, for example, if you encounter a situation, okay, and in that situation you are not able to resolve it. So what will happen? At least you will learn. Okay, that is the logic of Follett, that even if conflicts come, so conflicts may not be totally resolved, but what conflicts will bring? The conflicts will bring the opportunity for creativity. Okay. So she's saying we generally we use domination or we use compromise, but she gives her idea as integration. Okay. So you can analyze that why she wanted the conflict, okay, why she desired the emergence of conflict in the organizations. So conflicts will channelize the unspent energy. Finally, new solutions may come and they may increase the overall knowledge of the organization. Okay. That is the logic of creative experience. So when you are dealing with something unseen or something which you do not comprehend, then what happens? Your mental abilities or faculties are challenged. Okay. That is the logic of integration. Where you know the solution, then how your experience, how your ability to deal with the problem will emerge. If you know the solution already, that means what? You have not challenged your creativity. So she's saying that what? Conflicts will develop this opportunity. And how conflicts will be resolved? Obviously, a coordinative role of the manager and the workers. Okay. No doubt manager will play an important role. Okay. So in that way she also contradicts herself. Okay. So you can say, because it is comment, so you can analyze this part that, okay, what is the nature of conflict she discusses and how to resolve it. But you see, even the modern concept of conflict or conflict resolution believes in, or like situational model, it also believes in both these strategies. Sometimes the conflict has to be dealt with the strong hand. Otherwise, what will happen? The purpose of the organization will suffer. And sometimes the purpose is much bigger than the interest of the individual members of the organization, like national security. By somebody posting his grievance on the Twitter or Facebook or social media, okay, that grievance, if it leads to the threat to the national security, then obviously you need to repress the grievance. So her idea of conflict may be too ideological. So there are various areas where you may not, or necessarily you may not, want to resolve the conflict with what the logic she gives. Bureaucratic systems, they generally use domination. Okay. Or even if consensus is created, the structure of power will always remain. Okay, it cannot dismantle the structure of power. The subordinate must go through a process and then only resolve the conflict. Right. So you can bring that aspect also, that conflict is not always constructive for the organization. Okay. Like new organizations, okay, they will not try to resolve the conflict easily, okay, because they will try to control the conflict. Right. Okay, next let us see D. Okay, it is a very simple question. Leaders do the right things, manager do them rightly. Warren Bennis, is this distinction by him valid? Explain. Okay. So obviously first bring that how behavioralism influenced the emergence of the leadership as an important trait or virtue in the organization. So earlier the manager was considered as leader, but later a distinctive or distinction between the leader and manager, contributed by the knowledge of behavioralism. Okay. So the people who supported the idea of leadership, okay, what they said, that leaders have a distinctive nature, a distinctive character. It is a different role which is played by the individuals. Okay, he may be a manager, he may be no manager. So first this statement can be, or the context of the leader and the manager must be brought. Okay, then what exactly is the meaning of this line? So managers are more concerned with the traditional duties, the routine tasks. The leaders are more concerned with the extraordinary. Okay. But then how the leaders get this knowledge or the ability? That is the biggest thing here. How leaders acquire this ability? If you don't get an opportunity in the organization. Okay. So if we say that, okay, leaders emerge. Okay, leaders are not born, that is also a logic. Some say leaders are born, some say leaders emerge. So if there are problems and leaders emerge, obviously that problem may require a particular type of solution. So somebody may become or emerge as a leader. Okay. But he may not be the occupant of hierarchy. Okay. Then what will happen? Then he will vanish. His leadership role is basically contingent to the problem, nothing else. Okay. So what is the logic of Bennis? Okay. He is saying that, okay, the managers, if they become leaders, then they are the best people or they are the best performers in any organization. So if till the time he is a manager, he is basically concerned with the routine and the maintenance of status. When he becomes the leader, he is more concerned with the methodologies of a leader than the manager. So a bureaucrat, okay, for example, we can use that analogy. If a bureaucrat and administrator works as a manager, then probably he will be pro-government, no doubt. Okay, but if he works as a leader, he may be both. Pro-government as well as pro-people. Okay, so you can apply the same logic. So what he intends to say is that if there is a leader and there is a manager or there are different traits, then why don't we integrate a manager-leader, okay, or a manager as leader? So that will be the best thing that will happen to the organization. So you can discuss that aspect, that okay, leaders have unique traits, or leadership is a distinct type of behavior exhibited by people, whereas managership is more related to the hierarchical role of the person. What? Yeah. Bureaucracy, you link it mostly with the bureaucracy. Okay. Yeah, no doubt. Politicians basically are leaders. Okay. But not all politicians are leaders. Okay. Charismatic people who have, or leaders exercise mostly charismatic authority. Okay. Situational authority of Follett, charismatic authority of Weber. Okay. Managers mostly derive the power from the organizational charts, rules, regulations, laws. Both are legitimate because both are accepted. Okay. But you can say, yes, procedural legitimacy of manager is much higher than the leader. Okay. So it is better for manager to emerge as leader. Okay. Administrative law is recognized by its substance than its form. Okay, discuss, because obviously discussion means that you have to analyze or elaborate the idea of administrative law. So you can take this statement itself, and then what is the context of administrative law? Basically the French system. Okay. So you can briefly provide that, okay, the continental law system, maybe 2-3 lines will be enough. Continental law versus the common law. Anybody from law background? Nobody. Okay, so what is continental law? Continental law? France, right. Now, what is difference? What is the difference?
So they were treating administrators and common people
differently. See, common law. Okay, this views. Okay, let me give you some extra knowledge also. Okay. It takes an organic view. Okay, it takes an organic view of the state, the administration and society. Now what does it mean? That Lalu Prasad has, as a leader, as a chief minister, does not have his own interest. He is working only for the interest of society. So the purpose of the state is not distinct from the purpose of the society. And so is the purpose of the administration. So it views this arrangement in a very organic way. Okay, whereas this does not. Okay. It treats, okay, which would look very odd because we are talking about democracies mostly, but it treats the state and the society separately. So thereby preserving the rights of the people. Okay. Different or somewhere separate from the rights of the state. That becomes the purpose of the common law system. Okay, but here, yes, the logic is correct. Like you're saying, common law says that, okay, there is one law or there is a single hierarchy of laws. The ultimately laws emanate from the law of the land, that is the constitution, and duly from the judiciary. Okay, not making the law, but finally interpreting the law. So the laws are made in the common courts in the front of normal judges. That is the dicey concept of rule of law. So they are saying, what is law? The law is one which is made in the common courts in front of the normal judges, and that is the law. So absence of privileges to anybody. Whosoever makes the law or whosoever interprets the law, he is also subjected to the same law. Okay, whereas this is not. Okay, now see how. Because it is supposed or it is accepted that they are working for the society, and whatever they do, that will be in the interest of the society. For that matter, their privileges must be protected. Okay, so they emerge logically as powerful as the state. And that is basically because of their specific history. Instability, political instability, led to the emergence of strong administrative system, that even if there is a political vacuum, the administration can go ahead with the development and protection and security of the society. Okay, so you see the bureaucrats almost enjoying the privilege, okay, comparable to the political class. Okay. So administrative law comes from there. Okay, obviously now the nature of administrative law has changed. So the question is basically about that if we assume that administrative law, or there has been an emergence of administrative law here. Okay, so you have to define it, that what is administrative law? It is coming from this context, but now it is quite prominent here also. Okay. Why it has become prominent here? Okay, so the concept of administrative law is that it is the law which regulates the activities of the administrators. It also provides the privileges for the administrators, defines it precisely, each and everything. Okay. Then it is also, or it establishes the relationship between the administration and the people or the members of the society. So it deals with all of them. Defines the privileges, the jurisdiction of the members of the, or public servants. Okay. It also defines the relationship of the public servants and the citizens. Okay. And it also includes what? All those activities which are basically, or the implementation aspect of the administration. So any law concerning the implementation of the policy or the program will fall under the domain of administrative law. So the question is saying, is recognized by its substance than its form. That means what? That in these countries, we do not actually see or assume that there is a separate structure of administrative law. So by the technical definition of administrative law, we may say that here the administrative law does not exist, because it is not the same way as it is here, the mother of the administrative law, this system. So in terms of the form, it may not be visible here, but in terms of substance, it is visible here. So your right to information, emergence of various tribunalization of legal system, everything is going through the tribunal way. Okay. The administrators are playing crucial roles as far as the adjudication is concerned, as far as the implementation is concerned, as far as you can say the delegated legislation is concerned. So there are various aspects where we find the existence of administrative law, even though there is no separate body of laws known as administrative law. Okay. What is the logic behind this? That the society or the state, okay, as it becomes more and more dependent on the administration, the administrative law will play a very important role in the achievement of the goals of the society. So it will not be the constitutional law. Constitutional law sets the vision and the purpose, maybe the philosophy, but it will be the administrative law which will implement the constitutional law. Okay. Same logic which the Wilson is saying. It is important, or it is getting harder to run the constitution than to make one. So to run the constitution, you need to have administrative laws. The laws which help us implement the policies and programs. So nature of conflicts, whether you see the transport sector, you see the railways, okay, you see the, the PDS system, service delivery, okay, various other e-governance. So the nature of conflict that is emerging, what does it require? It requires a very discrete analysis of each and every aspect of work. Okay. If we do it, or specialization you can say in simple terms. The moment we do it, what do we need? We need more comprehensive laws to tackle them. Okay. Biggest example is your IT Act 2000. NGT. IT Act, basically the law if you want to. Okay. RTI, RTE. Okay. These are important laws which you can analyze. And you can say that yes, obviously you cannot analyze here. Okay. But you can bring a reference that RTI you see. Okay, how does it operationalize, or how does the transparency or the legitimacy of the governance process, how the RTI enforces the legitimacy? If there was no RTI, there was no legitimacy. See, the very survival of the state and its institution depends on the administrative law. Okay, because administration is the visual face of the state. That is the logic. Okay, now NPM, let us come to this, otherwise it will. New public management has been branded by certain scholars as new terrorism. It is Is it a justified comparison? What factors have led to decline of NPM so soon after it bursts? Obviously, it's a big question. Okay. So NPM has been branded as neo-terrorism, justified or not? Okay. Let us first understand. You can write it this way. Okay, start. Because question is not about neo-terrorism, question is about NPM. Okay, this distinction is also very important. Otherwise, you will keep writing on neo-terrorism. Okay, so our question is regarding NPM. Okay. Okay. So, what led to the emergence of new public management? Okay, there are 2-3 factors. One was public choice brings the ideological aspect. Okay. Then you can also say the OECD report. Okay, was also an important aspect. And then finally the nail in the coffin is the Osborne and Kaplan. The concept of okay, but these are basically theoretical contexts. Okay, if I say specific, what were the specific events? Okay, the political, administrative, or social events which okay. Okay, or Reagan, okay, the Reagan era. Okay. And you can say the Al Gore report, which came later, obviously not on environment. Okay, but this was related to administrative reforms. He implemented as it is the NPM. So these were some political or administrative changes. These were the theoretical developments which led to the rise of new public management. Okay, now NPM was about, it was not a theory of state, it was basically a theory of administration, or it was about administration. Okay. So there is a big difference that it was not related to the state but to the administration. Are you understanding this? It was not related to the state. It was not a theory of state. It was not viewing or it was not studying the state as such. That is the political part. It was studying only the administrative part. Now if you compare, let us say, Fayol with Taylor, what is the difference? Oh, you're correct. Fayol is talking about the, right from planning and probably to the execution, supervision, everything, but probably not about the lowest part. Okay. But obviously the upper part will also control the lower part. So logic is, if I implement now, if I take that analogy, can I say that Fayol was more concerned with this process and Taylor was more concerned with, if I take this as an organization, the authority system of a society, is it or not? So I would say this more concerned with Taylor. Obviously don't bring the concept of line and staff. Okay, but if I make or draw an analogy between them, so what? This part is mostly concerned with what? The planning part, the policy making part. Okay, or you can say more intellectual activities are involved. Okay, even though higher level administration will involve in that, I'm not denying it. Okay, but just for drawing a reference. So it seems to be more concerned with the technicalities of the administration and not with the values or vision. It is not concerned with that. Okay. So if I say that the administrators under the new public management are not going to see the overall picture, they are more concerned with what? The implementation of or using certain advanced techniques how to implement what has been decided. Okay. So it brings the first thing that it is not about the philosophy, the value system, or it is no more about the purpose, but it is always about the or only about the fulfillment of the purpose. Okay. Brings it backward. It assumes that administrators are implementers and politicians are policymakers. Okay. So if I take this way, that okay, more concerned with the technicalities. Okay, why was the concern? The efficiency. Okay. So it wanted to increase, make it more efficient. At the same time, concern about the cost, time, user charges, and so on. Okay. Now at this logic, that it is more concerned with the technicalities, more concerned with the operation, more concerned with the fulfillment of objective rather than the decision regarding the objective itself. Okay. In that way, I can call that it seems to be more Tayloristic in nature. Efficiency, procedure-based, technicalities, concern is efficiency, okay, what. Okay. And somewhere it is isolating the administration from the state. So it brings the dichotomy also. Okay. So the concern of administration is what? Merely the implementation of the techniques and how these techniques would be identified by a discrete analysis of the administrative process. So it brings the neo-Taylorian vision into the administration. Okay. So excessive use of technology, okay, concern with efficiency, procedure-based, rationality, more concerned with, you can say, cost and time, all the Taylor's purpose. Okay. But where it is non-Taylor in nature? How it is non-Taylor? Because see, Taylor's concept was basically in the context of industrial management. Okay. His mental revolution, you can analyze it in any aspect, but mental revolution was purely concerned with what? Increasing productivity and productivity as the solution for the conflicts. Now, if you take that, you see, if you talk about poverty, so can poverty be only eliminated by increasing the productivity of food grains? No possible. Or hunger can be eliminated by that. Now bring Amartya Sen's idea. So what he's saying, development is about the expansion of freedoms. So if you view administration only as playing a productive role or with respect to only increasing productivity in the society, that is not the role of administration. So administration comes with an express role of what? Protecting the values, preserving the values, and at the same time achieving the efficiency. Okay. So you can say yes, one part of the administration where the government is performing commercial functions, PSUs, PPP models, special economic zones and all those things, they are basically what? They are just neo-Taylorist in nature. Government also wants to earn money, cess, imposition of this charge, that charge, GST, okay. Number of taxes, rationalization of taxes is what? Basically neo-Taylorist in nature. Increase revenue, earn revenue, create surplus and increase the benefit for the society, fine. But where it is serving the equity, justice, equality, then obviously it is not neo-Taylorism in nature. Okay. Even though Taylor may not be considered totally exploitative. Okay, but obviously his vision was much restricted as compared to the role of the administration today. So NPM what? NPM visualizes it. Okay. NPM is not saying ultimately that it is just about efficiency. Later NPM includes so many things into that. Okay. Okay, like there is an evaluation by Osborne and Gabler. Okay, they are saying that the state will change the role. If the state's role reduces, then what happens? The administrator's role must increase. Okay. That is the logic of dichotomy. So administration must play active role, but administration's monopoly is also reduced under new public management. Private sector comes. So they are saying the change of the role from doing to steering, or from rowing to steering. But Osman and Gabler, they are saying that if the change or role changes from rowing to steering, then they have a lot of time. Okay, their power consolidation is high. Okay, that means what? Person who are not doing things, but they are only regulating it. So there is no change in the nature of the resource. There is no change in the power of the state. Only the function has changed. So NPM in that regard cannot be considered as neutral. Okay, because it is understanding the nature of the power, the relationship between the state and the administration. And without the increasing power of the state, or if the power increases of the state, then automatically it transmits into the administration. Okay. So they are saying that it is not about just an entrepreneurial government earning money and spending money. It is not just about technique or technology. New public management ultimately would reform the dysfunctionalities of the bureaucracy. So there it is not neutral. So you can say that okay, it may not be totally justified. It is justified on certain grounds. It is justified in terms of the principles which seem to be common to the Taylorism and the new public management. Efficiency, productivity, rationality, technique-based, discrete analysis or specialization of work, and this seems okay. But where it comes to the achievement of purpose, the nature of goal, okay, they do not match. Okay. So what factors led? That you have answered. Okay. So rather than treating it separately, you can start with that only, the context. Okay. So what factors led to the demise? Okay. It is the emergence of e-governance. Okay. So biggest factor which led to the demise of NPM, okay, was the digital era governance. Okay. There is a paper written by, it is not available in the books obviously, okay, but in one of the books, perspectives, new perspectives on public administration by Mohit Bhattacharya. Okay. So the paper was written by, anybody remembers who wrote the paper? Okay. Patrick Dunleavy. Okay, there is a theorist, Patrick Dunleavy. So Dunleavy has written, NPM is dead. Long live digital era governance. Okay, 2004 somewhere. Okay. So the demise of NPM comes from 2-3 factors, not just this paper. Okay, obviously this paper explores the rise of DEG, digital era governance. In 2002-03, the emergence of new public service, okay, NPS, is also one important factor. New public service is challenging the new public management. Okay, then if you see 2007-08, in fact 2002 onwards, but 2007-08 public value approach. Okay. 2002-03 neo-Weberian state. These are all the theoretical developments which challenge the new public management. Okay.
But the core of these challenges, was that the reason because somehow the social capital was weak and people were not able to pay for the service given under NPM?
No, but that is not the only reason. Why? Because the NPM comes with the values of the market.
But developing societies, the
Wow.
social capital is weak, they can't pay.
See, even today, that is correct, but even today, how the government is viewing, or how the people are viewing the governments in the developing countries as the guardian. Basically, the governments are they are also service providers, but at the same time, they are the moral conscience keepers of the society. Public services are still viewed in some respect or sacrosanct nature today also. So you cannot say the demise was purely because they were not able to pay. It was because it was not compatible with the cultural and the value norms of the developing society, and also in many developed countries. Okay. There was lack of, or it led to the lack of capacity of the states to deal with number of challenges. Terrorism became very important. 9/11 attacks. Okay. And for that matter, internal security, external security issues emerged. Okay. Environmental concerns, global concerns regarding conservation. Okay. All this led to, because the governments were no more only concerned with the commercialization of its services and consequently reaping the revenue. Okay. No, it is no doubt. It is relevant, but you cannot understand, try to understand. Theoretically, it has been challenged. And why theoretically it will be challenged? When functionally some change will happen. So if the ICT or e-governance, if you use the technology and you say bureaucracy, many of you have studied at least bureaucracy. So if you see bureaucracy has traditional problems and you use the technology, okay, can technology replace the bureaucrat? Then what will you do? Okay. Let us say I replace a bureaucrat by a manager. Then what is the difference? No, you cannot say that. Telecom industry, why is it not serving the public interest? Transport sector, aviation sector. Public interest is being served better than by the private players than the government. Okay. No, but if you replace it by the manager, okay, the manager is not a trained person in the constitutional values. Okay, he is an MBA, or for that matter, he is more concerned with the economics of a decision than the politics and the social aspect of a decision. He is not concerned with that. Okay. Now you cannot change his nature. So voluntarily, his commitment will be more towards the economic goals. Okay, even if he does not want it, it will be more spontaneous in nature. Whereas a bureaucrat who is trained in constitutional value system, 2 years, 2.5 years, or maybe his experiential learning that he makes throughout his career from lowest to the highest level. So how will his spontaneous behavior would be? What will be his natural impulse towards the public interest? Okay, this is the biggest factor where the NPM was challenged, that it comes with all the benefits, but it also comes with the market value. Okay, this is known as, generally we don't deal with that much study. It is known as the Wingast paradox. So if the NPM replaces the traditional bureaucracy, okay, so it cannot be a trade-off, a simple trade-off, that NPM comes, replaces the bureaucracy, okay, or it is equal to bureaucracy. How is it possible? Okay. Because this is devoid of these values. So what do you want? The efficiency of this, okay, wrapped in the values of this. You need a sensitive bureaucrat who is competent. Okay. A morally, ethically concerned bureaucrat, okay, but who serves it with the professionalism of a private sector. That is what you want. That means what? The NPM is not this. It cannot replace this. Okay, NPM plus something should be there. Okay, so NPM plus the democratic values, yes, then it can replace. Okay, so what they did? That it is easy for the market value to penetrate into a democratic system and now reform the entire democratic process. How is it possible? How will you justify the subsidy? How will you justify the deficits in the government? Okay. How will you justify the freebies given by the government? How will you justify them? So entrepreneurial bureaucrat will not give the policy advice. That is a big problem. So that is what the reason for the demise. Okay, and also we say because the state's capacity reduced to deal with the modern type of problems. There the role of the state becomes more important today. So even if state is regulating, then state must have a very strong network as well as knowledge regarding the financial markets, regarding the digital frauds, regarding the cyber crimes. Okay, so how will state strengthen its capacity if the administrators are basically not the ones who are doing things now? They are basically managing. Things are being done by the private sector. So who becomes more knowledgeable in the process? The private sector. Okay. So that was also one of the biggest challenges. Okay, accountability is missing, capability is reducing. Okay. So ultimately this kind of state will turn out to be a hollow state. Okay. But that is only the critical part. Okay. We don't deny that new public management has not influenced. For 20 years it has been a paradigm of public administration. Okay. So in 2009, what your concern is, that can be supported by another paper in 2009. Okay, written by person Jugdev Rice. Okay, he is saying, is NPM dead? He brings his own logic, okay, a counter paper to Patrick Dunleavy. So is new public management dead? Now he says no. Because he's saying all the changes that have been brought by the ICT, those are basically the changes which were visualized by the new public management. So technology has not brought about much change. Okay. It has only reinforced the changes as perceived by the new public management. So you can say that yes, the reasons for demise may be this, but ultimately there is no demise of NPM. Because NPM as a philosophy will always continue. The governments cannot retreat from the rationality now. Nobody can retreat from the rationality, that is very obvious. Okay, that is the law of nature.
Sir, deglobalization movement, can we say it's a manifestation of?
Which one?
Sir, deglobalization movement.
Deglobalization. You can say yes, it is somewhere, but NPM basically is not talking about the cultural perspective. Okay, he is only talking about the value system. Cultural perspective, deglobalization, you can say yes, it is mostly because of the conflicts which increased in certain countries because of the globalization. Certain countries were able to absorb the change, but certain countries were not able to absorb. Okay, so India or maybe some other countries, they are exceptions as far as the impact of globalization is concerned. They have benefited from that. But so many countries have not benefited from globalization. Okay, so the movement, don't say deglobalization, okay, but it is anti-globalization perspective. Okay, they are moving towards that, okay, but only because they have huge indigenous population. Okay, they have lack of distribution or equitable distribution of resource under globalization. Okay, local governance capacities, they are increasing them, okay, so that they can counter the pitfalls of crony capitalism and all those things. So you don't say deglobalization, it is anti-globalization.
But it increases the legitimacy of state and role of state.
You can say that, yes, but let us see if the people will not get the services, then again the legitimacy of the state can be questioned. Okay, this is what is happening in number of countries. Okay, in African countries, why we don't have stable governments? Because of the warring militia. Okay, why they are fighting? Why they are fighting? No. Okay, they are fighting what? You see how the resources, it is not about a fight over resource. No, it is basically fight over authority. Okay. But how it perpetuated, how this war was perpetuated, okay, by the globalized countries. Okay, they are entering into those areas. Okay, they try to provide them services and product and use their natural resources. Okay. Now what happened? If you are dependent on a particular product, once you get it for free, okay, next time you don't have money to buy it, but you are dependent, what will happen? Okay, it will increase more socio-cultural conflict. Okay, so imagine India. Okay, Delhi is prospering, the nearby areas are not prospering, then what will happen? More conflict. Okay, so state will have to ensure it, market will not ensure it. Okay. So you can say this process is not deglobalizing it. Okay, eventually the legitimacy of the state depends upon how it tackles the conflicts. Now the people are not concerned about how it gives the service. Service they can acquire from the market. So you can say that legitimacy concept has changed. Okay, earlier it was why the state? Today, if the state is there, then what it must do? Okay. So legitimacy of function of the state. What is the functional legitimacy? Why it is there now? So people are asking, okay, why? Because it must do this. Fine. So under the globalization, what will happen? The states will function like the adjunct to the international institutions. So UN decides that there is a climate change and you must do this. Okay. It is not this government of India which decides it. So you can tell me we are working like satellites of this entire system. So where is deglobalization? There is no deglobalization. More economic dependency, we cannot become a closed economy. Now, Abraham Maslow, that is a perspective. Okay, Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs and Friedrich Herzberg's two-factor theory have commonalities in analysis of human motivation. This is a simple question. Maslow talks about hierarchy of needs from the psychoanalysis perspective. That means what are the needs of humans and how they are motivated, okay, to achieve those needs. So Maslow is saying that there is a deficiency. Okay. This deficiency is visible in the form of a need. Okay. So to fulfill that deficiency, you will be motivated and you will move towards certain things which will fulfill that need. So you will acquire or fulfill the need, assuming that this need is going to fulfill your deficiency. So for him, food also comes under motivation. Subsistence also comes under motivation. But if you go to the Herzberg brings the two-factor theory. Okay. So they have differences as far as they perceive what motivates and what does not. Okay. What is the commonality? That both of them assume that motivation is a psychoanalysis process. The motivation, okay, is an important ingredient in understanding the human behavior in the organization and how the human behavior can be motivated, diverted, whatever, by understanding the motivational levels of the individuals in the organization. Okay. In fact, both recognize the utility of qualitative needs in the lives of humans. Okay. But Herzberg is more discrete in his analysis, Maslow is not. Maslow is more concerned with the average motivation of individuals. Herzberg is more concerned with the specific needs of the individuals. Okay. Motivation being separate and subsistence being separate. Okay. Their methodology is similar. Okay, that is also one commonality. Okay. What is the methodology? Are you feeling some? No, you are young people. Okay. So commonalities in analysis of human motivation. Okay, you can discuss the first, the needs and the goals of the Herzberg and Maslow. Okay, then analyze their methodology. Okay, behavioralism, how it influenced the emergence of these two theories. Why motivation became an important factor in determining the organization or the performance of the organization. Right. Then you can bring the other aspect also, that they were not common but they were also distinct. Okay. So Herzberg's analysis centers around not the need or need being more as maintenance, motivation being more as, the goals being more as motivation. For Maslow, need and goal almost same. Not much difference. Okay. I can make out. Many of you are not understanding it, but it's okay. Okay. At least some, what is trickle-down approach? Little bit of pub you can understand. Civil society supplements and complements the state. However, its capacity and role depend upon the will of the state. Comment. Okay. Obviously not totally agreeable. Okay. Civil society supplement. Civil society is you define the civil society first, that what is the nature of civil society. Okay. Then in India we have a perception that civil society is mostly obstructive in nature. It is confrontationist in approach to the government, anti-establishment movements. Okay. But yes, certain areas you may find that there has been contribution of civil society, like the Food for Work program, okay, Adarsh Gram Yojana, okay, National Rural Livelihood Mission, Ajivika program, okay, SHG movement, okay, all where you have the civil society, you can bring that aspect. So however its capacity and role depends on the will of the state. No doubt. Theoretically, the state must provide the opportunity for emergence of civil society. Okay. But in reality, this does not happen. The civil society emergence may be as a challenge or emerging challenge to the state. It may be influenced by external factors also. If you imagine social media, so social media is what? It is a direct channel of influence from the global to the national level, or native and the international. So what? The direct influence. So influence or the stimulus of the civil society movement may come from outside the country, not necessarily inside. Okay. But no doubt, if you see the concept of sovereignty, okay, and the state acquiring excessive powers in times of crisis, okay, like we have seen AFSPA, POTA, TADA, increasing paramilitarism, state justifying the repression of various movements. So considering or the experiences of the Baba Ramdev, all of you know, so it is quite obvious, Anna Hazare, so it is quite obvious that, okay, yes, no doubt, okay, state by virtue of its sovereignty and control over the authority, okay, and having a constitutional role and mandate, okay, obviously it's technically more legitimate than the civil society. Okay. So it also depends on the nature of state. Okay. But nature of democratic states will definitely justify increasing the civil society. Okay. But yes, considering all these problems, okay, sometimes it appears that yes, state is the one which regulates the emergence of civil society, especially the NGO movement in India. Okay. So the present government, okay, the earlier government promoted the NGOs. The present government has restricted, or they have somewhere restricted the role of NGOs, FCRA Act and so many other things, 2D accounts, many things have come now. Okay, so you can bring that logic also. Okay, that yes, state and civil society or civil society movement may be influenced by state, justified on these grounds. Okay, but the best way would be what? Where there is spontaneity in civil society movement. Okay, but it does not remain for a long time because people do have their own problems. Okay, it is more ephemeral in nature, especially in developing countries. So people are not aware, they are illiterate, okay, and also the number of issues where people can be easily misguided, that also justifies the role of state. Okay, because many of the issues in the civil society are what? They are basically influenced by some forces or some ulterior forces. Elite capture. Okay. So community policing, okay, Salwa Judum problem, many things might happen. So in fact they were state sponsored. Okay. So you can bring that issue and you can logically say that no, it is the democratization process can be initiated by the civil society. As more democratization takes place, participation of people, voting percentage, civil and political rights consciousness, as it will increase, okay, consequently the state's role may be changed. So it is not the state influencing the civil society, it can be civil society influencing the state. Present number of legislations which have been formed, RTI, whistleblowers protection and many things. Okay. Initiative for judicial reforms, all are coming from here only. Okay, the participative, next question, third A. Participative Management School of Argyris and Likert advocates democracy within the administrative system. Will this approach be equally useful to developing countries with evolving democracies? Okay, it is obvious. Internal democracy is missing in bureaucracy. Okay. But the participatory management theorists were those, okay, who talked about consensus building, okay, and use of something known as there is a concept given by Follett, okay, that power over and power with. Okay, power over is which the superior exercises on the subordinate. Power with is the peer-to-peer exercise of power. Okay. So this participatory management theorists, they used the concept of power with. Okay. So if you take Likert, you have to analyze that. If you take Likert's system 3 and 4, okay, and Argyris concept of maturity, immaturity, fusion process, learning, double loop learning, okay, various concepts of Argyris, okay, sensitivity training, matrix organizations, okay, they all indicate towards democratization of internal structure of the administration. Okay. Will this approach, so you have to bring first this aspect, that what did they talk about, which expresses the internal democracy. Okay. Okay. Lickardt's approach to the management also, or leadership, leader-centered, employee-centered approach. There are two approaches. Okay. Will this approach be equally useful to developing countries with evolving democracies? It is quite obvious. Okay, that the word evolving democracies. Okay. So when the democracies are evolving, okay, there are various kinds of forces which may act. Disintegrative forces and cultural diversity forces. Okay. So you have to manage that. Okay. If there will be more and more cultural diversity like India, then what? Somewhere we need to control it. Okay. But then, okay, we say that, okay, yes, diversity can be best experienced only when there is autonomy of exercising the diversity. So in that sense, you can say that, yes, the administrative structures in developing countries may emerge as a combination of both. The strict regulation by the state as far as the objectives are concerned. But at the same time, the reforms, okay, or the need for administrative reforms coming from the society. So internal democratization may take place in the form of participation of people. Okay. Involving more and more people in the feedback mechanism, policy formulation, policy implementation, policy feedback or policy evaluation. You can involve people. Or you can use direct democratic devices, not necessarily directly integrating people, but through the devices like referendum, social media, okay, or whatever ICT you can say. So in that way you can say that democratization may take place and these strategies may help. Okay. But if there are nascent democracies, then in the nascent democracy it is assumed that it has to be led by the state. Okay. But India does not conform to that. India gave the right to vote right from 1947. Okay. It talks about equality and equity. It talks about equality of gender. Okay. It talks about dismantling of the traditional caste structure, the patriarchy, and so many things. So you can say India did not function like a fledgling democracy. India emerged as a full-fledged democracy. So their strategies may be useful, no doubt. Okay. Any system which needs to stabilize, okay, obviously it has to increase the participation or acceptance of authority by the members. Okay. But can it be called true regarding bureaucracy? Should the bureaucracy be democratized? Because this question can have a larger context also. One is at the level of society, how citizen and government can interact. Other can be within the administration. Should we democratize the administration? Yesterday itself, Prime Minister said that the bureaucrats who are turning to social media, okay, they must use the social media for public interest and not for individual heroism. So that is correct. So it depends upon how much you want to democratize. Obviously, democratization of bureaucracy would involve various things. Not necessarily giving free will or free autonomy to the absolute autonomy to the bureaucrats. Okay. Democratization means what here? That we must increase more public and administration interface. Okay. We must increase or fast track the mechanism of grievance redressal. Okay. We must justify the reforms within the administration. We must justify the cost of reforms in the administration. If you have read second ARC, you will understand the logic. Reforming the personnel administration, okay, reforming the citizen administration relationship, reforming the local governments. This all is a move towards the same logic which they are using. Principle of subsidiarity is what? It is a reflection of Lickert and Argyll. Okay. Within the bureaucracy, yes, you can say, providing autonomy, initiatives, or giving liberty to the bureaucrats in terms of innovation and creativity. It is almost like Argyll's view of a matured bureaucrat. Okay, so you can use all that. That is how we have to write the answer. Okay, next question. Executive position imply a complex morality and require a high capacity of responsibility. What does it mean? Executive position imply a complex morality and require a high capacity of responsibility. What is the complex morality?
There is always a content of interest in the politics.
But the functions of the executive, written by Bernard. Okay. So Bernard is saying, see, what is the difference? What is the complexity that one faces? One is when he talks about authority and decision making. So Bernard is viewing that authority should be based on acceptance. Are you understanding? At least all the new students, okay, newly oriented to PubEd, PubEd freshers. So authority is based on acceptance. At least you understand this logic. Authority is based on acceptance. Okay. That means what? There will be a formal structure. Authority will be exercised, but there will be a hidden assumption that the people who are accepting the authority or who are on whom the authority is exercised, they have an understanding of why the authority is being exercised. Okay. Are you understanding why? How we can accept something as ethical when we know the real intention and the purpose, not just the action. That makes it ethical. Includes the intention and the purpose. So the moment it said, okay, law is for the good of everyone. Wearing helmet is to reduce the accident. Wearing helmet is to increase your self-life. Or wearing helmet is to protect your life. That very moment you will ethically accept the role of wearing helmet or the law which regulates the helmet. Are you getting? So the logic here is, when we are saying Bernard understands the moral complexity, he is saying authority and decision making. There are two important aspects, functions of the executive. So exercising authority obviously to transmit the goals of the organization, achieve the goals of the organization, to transmit the executive orders into action and so on. Zone of indifference, which he talks about.
The same question, Bernard spoke about responsibility and intrapersonal
Model.
There were three categories: paralysis of what action, guilt.
That is, no, but see, it is obviously that analysis will be too much. Here, the question is about logically that when somebody is occupying this executive position, he has two challenges, twin challenges. One, as the agent of the organization.
And his personal
So you can simplify it because it will become. The second one is the agent of the organization, and second is what? The leadership role that he has to play. So you can understand, simplify it in that way, that a manager and a leader. Now, how when he is playing the role of a leader, obviously his personal value system, okay, his emotional component would be high. When he is playing the role of a manager, the emotional component will reduce and the technical component will increase. So to fulfill or exercise the authority, you need to be manager. Okay, but to understand that authority may not be accepted if it is not given in a particular way, contribution, satisfaction, equilibrium. Okay. So inducements and incentives, he is talking about that. So if authority is not exercised in a particular way, then it will not be accepted. That means what? You believe in authority, but not in the exercise of authority in the traditional manner. So that is a complex morality. Being efficient or rational and moral at the same time, how complex it is. Personalizing process, socializing process. Have you read it? Decision making of Bernard. That is what you are saying, no? That personalizing process and socializing process is very difficult. Okay. So he has to go through that. Okay, that is what the complex morality is. Okay, and for a high capacity of responsibility. Okay, obviously you accept that authority belongs to them, but you take the responsibility for their acts. If I say that, okay, my son will accept my authority only when I give the authority or exercise the authority in the way he wants. Okay. So he will accept the authority, but ultimately because I am the one who is exercising the authority, he is the one who is accepting the authority. Who is responsible for the act? Me or him? I. So positionally I am responsible. But logically, he is the one who is exercising the authority, not me. Okay. So in functions of the executive, he is giving the executive a more guardianship role of the organization. Okay. Even though they were also behavioralists. Okay. They are not like humanists. Okay. But they understand decision making, authority, exercise of authority, complex nature of modern organizations, intra-organizational environment, everything they are analyzing that. Okay. So you cannot write too much, but you can bring it. So comment, yes, you can say Bernard. No doubt Bernard supplemented the logic of, or Bernard influenced the logic of Simon later, because you have to comment. Okay, Bernard was also considered as a full, well-developed behavioralist, okay, who identified various aspects of human behavior. Okay. Probably he developed a kind of organizational human continuum. That was the contribution of Bernard. Okay, dealing with the organization as well as the human at the same continuum. Fine. That is enough for discussion. When the media is controlled by vested interest, how it can control the vested interest in the government? How can the media become more responsible? So there are two parts. When media, how can it control the vested interest of the government? Okay. So one is saying that okay, media is corrupt, and you have to obviously analyze that aspect, that why can we term media supporting or protecting the vested interest? Okay. So there are a number of instances. Media acting as extortionist, paid news, yellow journalism, okay. Then expressed nexus lobbying between media, corporate, government, public servant. Okay. Likewise, you can bring that idea. Okay. Then how can the media be made more responsible? Obviously, the first thing is that we need the media to be free and fair. So we cannot curtail the freedom of speech of the media. Okay. So that is not the logic. Logic here is that how it can be made responsible. So there is Press Council of India. Press Council of India has issued 9-point guideline for voluntary code of ethics to be followed by the media. Okay.
So can we cite specific examples?
You can cite example. Why? Because if you want to highlight, okay, that in what way the deviation from the ideal and the ethical norms of the media takes place, then you have to bring the issues. Okay. So your issues can be brought at the international perspective, also national. That's a WikiLeaks. Okay. On the ethical level, okay, it is wrong. Okay. Why? Because if I say the means which were used, they were wrong. But the ends which was achieved is right. Okay. But from the perspective of government, he is not, or that is not acceptable. Why? Because it keeps happening. Then the government, or big problem with the security of the government data. Okay. So there would be people who might be whistleblowers or who might be activists within the system. Okay, but they do not define the process. Okay, they are specific elements within the system. The system does not comprise or does not emerge powerful in that way. Okay, so if they develop a process, if they develop a institution, then it is fine. But if there are stray incidents, in one batch 10 bureaucrats come honest, in another 20 come honest. So there are stray incidents. That is not transforming the culture of the administration. Same with the media. Okay. If we are talking about stray incidents, sting operations, and the Supreme Court's view on the sting operations, and the acceptability or admissibility of the electronic evidence, okay. Likewise, okay, you can say that okay, these may be not considered as incidents. Why? Because they become the cultural aspect of the media now. Okay, so that is the difference. If you highlight the incidents, then they must reflect the larger problem or cultural change in the media. It should not be just the incident. Okay. So in that regard, we can say that yes, they have downgraded. Okay, even the issue related to the Congress party and which newspaper? Herald. And likewise, there are a number of cases which we can cite, no doubt. So how they can be made? So Press Council of India is one. Okay. Then you can develop an ombudsman system for media, okay, independent. Okay. Okay. Then there is also a provision which is used in India also now, the role of independent editors and citizen editors. Okay. So independent editors are people neither from the corporate, neither from the news, but they are basically the society or the members from the society, okay, or people who are experienced. Okay. So they can be brought about, who can independently review the news, okay, discuss it with the editorial team and the management team, and then come with. Okay. So that way we can say we can control it, but in no way there must be the executive control over the media. Okay, that cannot be justified on any ground. We cannot gag the media. Okay, government has recently amended certain rules. Fine. So you could have written all this, that is enough. Okay. Fourth question is very interesting, kindly read it. With every major transformation in the applied world of public administration, The study of public administration has grown in scope and intensity. Discuss the relationship between the evolution of the discipline and the profession of PubAd. This you can, new students can also tell me. They can understand this question. Is public administration a practitioner subject? Is it a practitioner's discipline? Do we learn the theory and then practice, or we practice and then we develop a theory? It should happen that way. It is much better. Oh, that is the ideal condition. But it does not happen. It's not that easy also. Obviously, an administrator converting his experience into knowledge, at the best he can give case study. Okay. So, but yes, public administration like Waldo. So Waldo is the supporter of the case study method in PubAd. Okay, what is case study method? Case study method is the exchange of information between the practitioners and the theorists. Okay. So somewhere the practitioner influences the theory. So in public administration, okay, the trend has not been that. Okay. Most of the theories which emerge, they came from the industrial management. Okay. And most of these principles which were developed, they were based on the experience of those people. So you cannot say they were purely theoretical. No. Okay. They were influenced by the practitioners. So you see the initial development of the theoretical development of PubAd, Wilson, Goodenough, all practitioners. They cannot be called purely as theorists. Okay. Even Taylor, Fayol, Golek, Arvik, all the practitioners. Okay. So practitioners influenced it. Okay, no doubt. But you see what happened? Now their understanding of administration as management, it reduced the utility of this knowledge in the actual administrative process. Okay. So you can start from there, that how the welfare states required a big administrative machinery, and because of that, okay, more and more practitioners, okay, they were involved in the administration of justice or this and this and this, and those were the people who started sharing their knowledge. So initial development in PubAd, okay, influenced by the practitioners, but later the management perspective reduced it to more at the level of theory. Okay, made it more analytical in nature, because okay, but this practice was downgraded once the Waldo comes, new public administration, and the Simon comes with the concept of logical positivism. Okay. So scope, public administration has grown in scope and intensity. Okay. Now if you take, it's better if you take NPA 1, NPA 2 and NPA 3. Okay. Okay. Because we are talking about basically a discipline of PubAd. So discipline emerged in America, and these are the three major events which define the scope of the discipline in public administration, or discipline of public administration in the American context. Okay. But you can say, you can add that most of the knowledge or the developments post 1960s and 70s, they are also coming from the developing countries also. Okay. Your anti-development model, okay. Then need for or emergence of alternative models of economic growth, like the, what is that, Bangladesh model? Grameen Bank. Okay. Or there are a number of other, Brazil, number of models are there. Okay, even the communist countries emerged economically very powerful. Okay. So it was quite obvious that now the theoretical developments were influenced by the changes which were taking place in the developing countries also. Okay. But no doubt, most of the theoretical development or practical understanding of public administration comes from the Western world only. Okay. So today we have the third world perspective in PubAd, which is influenced by these countries. Okay. Ultimately, you can say that post the NPA 3, okay, emergence of ICT, increasing role of specialists in administration because of ICT and economic globalization. Okay. You have Niti Aayog, okay, you had Planning Commission, okay, or you had internationally there are a number of bodies which are assisting the international institutions. Okay. So because of them, what has happened? Okay. because more and specialists are added. So specialists will be what? The practical aspect into the administration. The technical knowledge of the administration improves. So we can say inter-theoretic linkage and the practitioner-theorist linkage. It has increased the, what we can say, the rational nature of the theories or knowledge in public administration. More predictable now, okay, more prescriptive in nature, okay, it can give the solutions, okay, more or less, not, there are still certain areas, grey areas are there, like disasters or the human rights, okay, justice aspect, still that certain things are missing. Okay. But more or less, if you see Millennium Development Goals and Sustainable Development Goals, what they are doing. What are they doing? They are linking the practical and the theoretical aspect of the administration. That is what they are doing. Okay. You have to achieve this. Okay. How you have to achieve it? Okay. So there are larger questions to be addressed. It is not just the poverty, it is the incidence of poverty now. So see how the administrator is being enriched by the theory and how the theory is being enriched by the administrator. Now you have changed the goal from 2015 to 2030. So basically this knowledge would have come from where? The practitioners. Okay. So the policy, formulation, implementation, all are being influenced by theory as well as the practice both. Okay. So you cannot say that today PABAD as a subject lags either in terms of theory or in terms of practice. It is not. Quite evolved today. Okay. Even though you cannot draw a periphery of PABAD. Okay. Systems theory in essence is not a theory but an approach to study of administrative phenomena. It is totally correct. Okay. Why it is correct? Just one line. System is better to be called as approach rather than the theory. Why?
Logical approach illustrated by various things like
Considers everything as a system.
No, but system. So the logic is what? System is what? System can be understood in two ways. One as the general system model. Okay. So systems approach given by whom? Wiener. Yeah, Bertalanffy. Okay. Bertalanffy provided the systems approach. Okay. So he is viewing the system as an analogy to the biological system. Okay. So systems approach means what? Okay. System is more descriptive in nature. The approach is highly descriptive in nature. Descriptive means what? It associates various elements. Okay. The bigger system and the smaller system. Okay. It associates them what? With the concept of subsystems. Okay. So if systems approach, we view something as system, what are we viewing at? We are viewing at the interdependency. Okay. Now where can you end this interdependency? Obviously you have to draw an artificial line. Okay. So if I say this is the podium is part of this dais, the dais is part of this floor, now where to end it? Okay. The moment you end it, what? Then you are moving from general system model now to a technical system. Either administrative, political, social, whatever. And that very moment what? You are downplaying the utility of the systems approach. So you can say there is no more theory. Why? Because it is not about a definite idea, a definite percept. Okay. It is more about the description of reality. It does not come with a prejudice. That is why it is not theory. Fine. People who are intellectually separated from this discussion, okay, they can have a break and come, no problem. The principle of delegated legislation, I think, the principle of delegated legislation is, I think, right, but I must emphasize that it is well for the Parliament to keep a watchful and even zealous eye on it at all stages. Okay, so it is quite a simple question. Herbert Morrison, okay, you can bring 2-3 things. The concept of delegated legislation, the need for delegation or the need for delegated legislation, okay, the mechanism for delegated legislation and the role of public servants, how it is increasing. So the nature of law changes, the role of administrator increases. Okay. So new despotism, Frankenstein, okay, the concept of new despotism, okay, administrator working as Frankenstein's, Ramsay Muir, ex-Prime Minister of England. Okay, they brought these perspectives. Okay, fine. So this you can bring and criticize it. Okay. Budgeting is a political process. Vildavasky. Okay. Vildavasky is viewing the budget, okay, or policy. He is basically a theorist in the public policy. Okay, so he is viewing budget as a political process, budget as a process of bargain. Okay, so he's saying every policy has its own cost. The cost can be economic as well as the social, both. Okay, but his general focus is what? How budget is used as a tool of aggregation of interest or the elimination of certain things which you don't want. So he said it is a political process. Numerous interest groups are there. They contribute. It is not purely, okay. But if you want to criticize, it is saying examine. You can say that Vildavasky's concept is not totally correct, and we can criticize is why? Because the budget is, no doubt, it is an outcome of the legislative and the executive interaction, or you can say it is a more comprehensive process where the government as well as the opposition both are involved. Okay, but you see the India or countries like most of the modern democracies, okay, which are undergoing through transition now, emergence of rightist governments, okay, and also the majority wins. Okay, what it is doing? It has almost virtually eliminated the role of the opposition from the budgetary process. India is the biggest example. Okay. So budgets passed without discussion. Many state governments' budget passed without opposition. Okay. So you cannot say that it is purely political process. Okay. You can criticize. If you want, you can use it. DA and AD have a chicken and egg type of relationship. Okay, this is a statement by Riggs. To reform administration, okay, or to reform the society, you have to reform the administration. Which one to do first? That is the problem. Okay, so you bring the concept of exogenic and endogenic development model here. Okay. Bureaucratic politics, imbalanced polity, okay, all that can be used here. Okay, but it is 10 marker, not required. Digitalization provides great impetus to e-governance. No doubt e-governance is a bigger process than simply the digitization of records. Okay. 360-degree performance appraisal system is a rational idea, but it involves complex and inauthentic procedures. How can it be made foolproof? Okay, it is very obvious. In 360-degree, second ARC has highlighted, okay, that generally 360-degree process is used in the private sector. Okay. And it is more functional in the private sector where your superior, your subordinate, your peers, and also maybe your customers may evaluate you. Okay. So what is the biggest drawback? That first, how will you ensure the authenticity of all these? Okay. Secondly, if you talk about an organization, the superior-subordinate relationship is always guided by the difference in power. Okay, so in reality, it does not happen. That there will be an impartial evaluation of the superior by the, sorry, of the subordinate by the superior, and also of the person by his subordinate. Okay. There will always be the power difference which will be visible. Okay. Thirdly, 40% of the weightage here also is given to the subjective evaluation by the superior. Most of the 60% is performance based, but 40% is basically the subjective perception of good work done by the subordinate. It is done by the superior. Also, if you see, huge amount of information processing, collection of data, okay, real-time monitoring, many things are required. Feedback system, feedback mechanisms, they are required. Okay, so it is very difficult to implement. ARC has used the term results framework development or result development framework is a complex mechanism, okay, which can help in performance evaluation. So if you are outcome focused, okay, not the output focused, you are more outcome based. Outcome based monitoring is very difficult. How is it possible? Intangibles are evaluated. Okay. So it is tough using the 360 degree. Okay. You can say, कहीं तुम समझ गए पेपर? हाँ. Which one? Budgeting is a political. No. Political. No, budgeting is a political process. Budgeting, you can say, if your counterpart is what? That budgeting is purely led by the government or the authority. Administrative process, technical process, you can say. The negative of this would be, or counter to this would be, budgeting is a technical process. Okay. Next question, CE. Large public debt forces the adoption of tax and spending policies that result into higher taxes and reduced services. Okay, how this happens? How this happens? It results into higher taxes and reduced services. Right. If you increase your welfare and expenditure increases, okay, it is obvious that your deficit will increase. Okay, why? Or you can say most of the welfare activity will be done by administration. Okay. And even if the private sector is involved, okay, if you are increasing the investment through the private route, okay, then also you have to make sure that there are certain people or certain sections of the society who get the service. So you require more investment, okay, so you increase the privatization. Okay. But you cannot excessively control the private sector. Let's say India ranks 26 out of 131 in the global competitiveness index. Okay, so what does it mean? That still India is lagging behind. There are 24, 25 more preferred destinations of investment than India. So it is quite obvious that even if that is done to reduce the public debt, okay, exchange traded funds, have you heard of ETF brought in the budget? Okay. Where the PSUs, okay, their equities are, or they are trading in the stock markets. Okay. Government is trying to raise fund. Okay, so here the logic of the question is simple, that if the government rationalizes the tax structure, increases the cess, imposes the user charges, ultimately what happens? It can increase the revenue. Why? Because instead of borrowing, it has to increase its revenue income or revenue. It has to reduce the revenue deficit. That is the key to reducing the budgetary or the fiscal deficit of the government. So if it increases the revenue through this route, and taxation is one of the best mechanisms for that. But what is happening? The most of the population does not come under the tax bracket, or maybe they evade the tax. Okay. So what government needs to do? See, it is increasing privatization. Okay. The people are becoming more and more apathetic towards the government because now they have the money and they prefer private services. Okay. So you can say the tendency to evade the black money will also be very high. Evade the tax will also be very high because the government is increasing the taxation structure. So this is what? This has something like a cumulative impact on both the relationship of the government and the citizens. Okay. So if government is spending more money on the services for the poor and it is increasing the tax burden on me, and I am saying that, okay, yes, so many poor are coming to the urban areas and they are using the roads which has been made by my tax. What happens? It creates more conflict and a tendency on my part to save my tax. Okay. So this creates a kind of circle. The government increases the scope of revenue, but at the same time its service standards reduce. Okay. Because now more and more people have to be accommodated within the same service. If the urbanization is inevitable, then what will happen? More people will come from the villages. So they will use the civic amenities of the urban areas. I am paying more tax, so I will come in conflict with them. Because I want my free space, I want my infrastructure, I want this, but they are not paying the tax. Now from my tax, what government is doing? Government is trying to increase the spread of services across them also. So the quality of service will suffer. No doubt. Okay. Slum development. Various programs are there which are suffering from this. Okay. Q without U or U without Q. Okay. So two concepts can be used. But in India it is U without Q. Universalization without quality. That is the biggest problem. Okay. Sixth, liberalization and globalization have transformed the nature of development administration. It is quite obvious that development is no more restricted to either the Western model or to the local model. It is a fusion of both. The local model is there. Lateral entry of competent experts into the government will promote freshness and innovation, but it can create problems of accountability. Yes, lateral entry is not common in generalist civil services. Okay. So countries which are rank based or generalist in nature, okay, they have something like specific services being superior to others. So they have cadre posts restricted for certain services. So they don't allow the people from within the other service itself. So they cannot allow people from the outside. Okay, so first of all, they do not allow the people from within their own system from other services. So how can they allow people from outside? First, that is the biggest issue. So there is a generalist specialist conflict. Okay. So, but yeah, now you can say that, okay, technology, globalization, so there is a need for specialists. So if more specialists are allowed to enter at the middle or higher levels in the organization, first thing it will create, let us see the negatives. First thing it will create what? The conflict between the existing structure and the people who enter the structure. Second, most of the lateral entry or people through the lateral entry will come from the private sector or maybe from the R&D, okay, or maybe from some technical departments. So those people and the people who are trained here, mostly generalists, okay, their vision will be different. Okay. They are more general in nature, they are more specific in nature. They are more concerned with cost, time, economy, they are more concerned with social, society, politics, culture and all. So that may be ideological conflict also. Okay. Third conflict will emerge because of this sheer sharing of power and authority. Okay. The specialists and the journalists will now share the authority. Okay. Now most of the organizations are hierarchical in nature. It is very difficult to share the authority. So maybe specialists or people through lateral entry will be added in the form of staff and not the line. Again conflict will emerge. Okay. So you can write these conflicts. It is very difficult to integrate people through the lateral mode. Also the nature of experience required to occupy the post of a commissioner, let's say. Okay. What is the nature of experience required? Communalism, corruption, politicization, okay, local neta. You have to experience all that. Okay, then only you are qualified to become commissioner. Now somebody is coming from a corporate boardroom. Okay, IIT Delhi, IIM Ahmedabad, Harvard University, now he is coming. What does he know? Okay. So he will be more like an armchair administrator. Okay. So he might be knowing, he might be having the technical competency. Okay, but the real cultural context of administration cannot be understood by him. Okay, so maybe failures of policy. Okay. Politicians may not entertain their advices. Okay. They may be reduced only to a piece of furniture within the bureaucracy. So that happens with the specialists. Okay, specialists are generally used as symbols. When the real decision has to be taken by secretary, you associate anybody, how does it matter? Okay. So this can be the problems. Benefits, yes. Innovation, increasing role of specialists, entrepreneurial government, sense of earning money, creativity, everything will enter into the government. Okay, lateral entry will also create a competition amongst the existing members of the organization. Now they will not take the government for granted. They will have to earn their promotion. They will have to earn their incentive rather than simply being a damad of the government. Okay. Obviously now they will have to work for that. Okay. So they will become more competitive, more conscious of their position within the organization. Okay. But this may also increase the intra-organizational conflict and politics both. Journalists at one place, specialists at other place, okay, both trying to influence the political system. It may lead to these things. Okay. Benefit also in terms of the knowledge, in terms of the technical superiority, okay, in terms of speed of processing the information. So many things may come. Outsourcing, cost of outsourcing bachega. Huge cost the government has to incur on outsourcing and something. So they might get in-house solutions for that. Okay. So cost effective hoga, right. That is a discussion we had to do. So it is. There can be no performance auditing without performance budgeting. What does it mean? Performance auditing is related to the money which was spent what is the utility it created. This utility, has it any consequence for the development or the kind of goals we have or we are pursuing. So it links all this. The cost to the utility to its role within the overall developmental agenda. Okay. Performance budgeting means what? That whenever, there is a performance budgeting model. So whenever you are given money, so when you get or when you used to score well in your class 10th, then your father would be giving some chocolate or toffee or something. Maybe now today the gifts are different in nature, or at least, I got a banana when I topped my 10th exam. So my father came up and he said, it's okay, this is better for you, start preparing for your 12th exam. Okay. So logic is that when you are rewarded, when your performance is high. So when you are using the model of performance budgeting, so it is quite obvious that in performance budgeting, your allocation of budgetary support will be increased only when you have performed. But here what happens in most of the countries, how the allocation is done, because I am poor, give me more. So because I have overspent, I am way behind my target, so give me more money. Now that is not acceptable. Okay. Also, if alternatives are there, if you are not able to perform through this way, then there should be alternatives for that. Okay. Evaluate the alternatives, the expenditure, the cost estimation of the alternatives, and then go for the alternatives. That means you must have a ready reckoner of the alternatives which you may go for, but it is not there. So it is saying the finance ministry or when any budgetary process must include the performance aspect. The people who are performing low must not get the greater budgetary support. The people who are performing more or better, they must get the budgetary support or increase in the budgetary support or as they want it. So people who are not, or the departments who are not performing, underperforming, their budgetary support must be reduced. Okay. So how can you say that you have performed well? That means finally when you audit it. So you cannot audit unless you have an inbuilt mechanism of performance-based allocation of resource and performance-based management of resource. No, it is not there. Okay. Finally you don't have culture of performance, you don't have culture of outcome. None of the bureaucrats go for a midterm appraisal, none of the departments go for midterm appraisal, even though government has a system. Okay. So if this is not there, if there is no culture of performance, what is the utility of performance audit? Okay. If there is no Gram Sabha, what is the utility of social audit? Okay. So Gram Sabha must be empowered, no? Okay. So if there are only 10 people out of 100 people in the social audit, okay, does it actually increase or empower the Gram Sabha? It does not. It is a better excuse. More symbolism. So the question is about that performance audit is more about symbolism. Okay, then in reality the influence. Fine. Riggs' model of fused prismatic societies and their administrative systems have been inspired by Max Weber's typology of traditional charismatic legal rational system. See, this comparison may not be totally correct, but yes, Riggs was inspired by Max Weber, no doubt. Okay. Because the bureaucratic approach and its limitations led to the rise of the ecological model. Okay. So it is from the criticism of Weber that the Riggs derives his content of the ecological approach. Okay. Secondly, yes, if you compare it, Riggs also uses an ideal type approach and the Weber also uses an ideal type approach. Historical ideal type approach used by Weber and used by Riggs both. Okay. Weber, no doubt he does a comparative study. Okay. His comparative study is obviously located in the society. Okay, the influence of society on the emergence of institutions. Okay, same logic is used by the Riggs also. Fused, prismatic, and diffracted. So he is locating the institutional growth of administration, linking it to the specific socio-cultural context. Same was done by the Weber also. But what is the biggest drawback? That Weber does not understand or tries to study those factors which led to the emergence of these institutions, whereas Riggs studies it. Okay. But you can say that yes, because both were having Western bias, okay, both were trying to study, one was trying to study the concept of power and domination in the society, The other was trying to study administration as a subsystem or the role of administration in the development process. He was also studying the role of administration in the development process, Weber and Riggs both. Okay. So Weber was more concerned with an ideal model of development. Okay, that is the bureaucracy, whereas Riggs was not. Okay. But if you say yes, traditional authority, yes, it will be manifested in the form of a traditional administration, which may be, according to Riggs, is the fused model or the prismatic model, not the fused model. Okay. But where will you find the charismatic authority system in Riggs? The prismatic seems to be more closer to traditional. Prismatic model is not, charismatic authority. Okay. No, it is there in the prismatic system only, Klecht's formation. Okay. Difference between polynormativism. Religious also dominating, law is also dominating. Okay. But it's not a pure type of traditional authority system as conceived by Weber. Okay. So you can say when we compare these models, okay, they are no doubt more or less based on the type of authority systems which is evaluated by Weber, Wirth rational and Zweck rational. Wirth rational is based on values, Zweck rational is based on rationality. So the prismatic or the diffracted model seems to be closer to Zweck rational approach. These two seems to be closer to the Wirth rational approach. That analysis you can do. Okay. But in fused also we find, in diffracted also we find the prismatic features, and in prismatic also we find the fused features. So it is not purely ideal as visualized by Weber. Okay, it is not that ideal category as visualized by Weber. For Weber it is ideal. For Riggs it may not be ideal, even though he is using an ideal typology. Okay, so you can evaluate it is not totally an outcome of that. Methodology approaches more or less similar. Okay, but conceptually they are different. One is more concerned with the dynamism, the other is more concerned with the static aspect. Bureaucracy has inbuilt limitations to act as the prime catalyst to multifaceted development in a democratic country. Analyze this statement with appropriate example. It has inbuilt limitations to act as a prime catalyst. Okay. If you simplify the question, it is saying that bureaucracy is in itself a limitation. The features of bureaucracy are limitations to the achievement of the development or multifaceted development in a democratic society. It is quite obvious. It does not cater to diversity. It is more towards homogenization. Its purpose is primarily rationality. It believes or it can serve the static needs of the society. It can maintain the society in static equilibrium rather than in dynamic equilibrium. To bring all those features. Okay. Neutrality results in this. Apolitical nature results in this. Behavioral traits are more or less not compatible with the problems or the dynamics of the developments or developing society. Democracy requires, you can imagine that way, that a system which itself is not democratic, how it can serve the democratic needs of a society. So bureaucracy does not value democracy. Okay. But it has to serve the needs of democracy. The superior does not want the subordinate to speak. High level of formalism in the system. But democracy comes with dissent, opinion, conflict. It accommodates all of them. Can we say that statutory audit and social audit are the two sides of the same coin? Or are they two separate coins with varying values? Okay. Obviously, they are not two faces of the same coin. No. Statutory audit, the purpose is more or less very defined. It is technical in nature. Okay. It is more concerned with the legality. Whereas social audit is an outcome of the increasing civil society participation in the governance process. So it is different. You can say if we assume that yes, both want to work as a deterrent, okay, both are preventive in nature, okay, no. Social audit is curative in nature also. Statutory audits are mostly Social audit is preventive and curative both. Statutory audits are mostly preventive in nature, not curative. Curative in nature, not preventive in nature. So social audit is more real time and dynamic. So we can say yes, they are varying values. People centric hai. One is institution centric, law centric, procedure centric. One is people centric. There's a difference. Various components of human resource management are interrelated. It is obvious. Recruitment, training, incentive system, performance appraisal. Okay. Then further you can say promotions, okay, service conditions, their role within the administration, overall role, interpersonal relationship, communication, everything is what? Interrelated. That is how you have to feel. Administrative ethics includes the code of conduct of civil servants, but goes beyond it as well. Okay, that means what? Ethics is much broader as a concept than merely the enforcement of certain predefined behaviors and conduct. Okay, because ethics deals with both what you show and what you think, both. Okay. So you can start with that logic that in a law, a person is guilty when he commits a crime. In ethics, he is guilty when he thinks about it. Is it or not? So it is not specifically related to the actions and just the behavior. Okay, so here we are saying that by making a code of conduct, what we are visualizing a specific kind of desirable behavior from the public servants. But that may not be the real motive of the public servant. So administrative ethics will what? It will go beyond merely a formalized code of conduct. There must be a code of ethics as visualized by second ARC. So code of ethics would be having a broader framework than merely a code of conduct. You do this, don't do this. Okay. But you must also have to imbibe that why should I not do this and why should I do this. Yes. So your personal sphere must equally be influenced by the ethical consideration, not just your public behavior. Okay. So code of conduct can to an extent make a person honest, but it cannot bring the culture of honesty in the bureaucracy. Okay. It can only act as a deterrent, but it cannot motivate you to become ethical. Okay, that is quite visible in the corruption trend in India. The people who are quite honest at the lower levels of the service become dishonest as they move higher in the bureaucracy. So why does that happen? Why should that happen? Because the scope of corruption, the scope of avoiding the law, the scope of protection increases. Justice delivery is not strong enough. Okay. Political nexus is formed. They can break the law with impunity. Nobody is there to punish them. So they are free. So it is quite easy for them to do it. Right. Of all the processes involved in public policy, implementation is of greatest importance. Examine the impediments in policy implementation. Okay. Wilson, from Wilson to Simon to everybody, is concerned with a better implementation of policy. What are the impediments to policy implementation? One is the bureaucracy itself. So you need to reform the structure and the behavior within the bureaucracy. Okay. Second is the resource, technology. Okay. The kind of knowledge base we have, that may itself be a big hindrance. Okay. For example, train accidents, okay, disasters. Many things are there which we cannot tackle because our knowledge base is not that strong. Then the third aspect is the politicization of the implementation. Okay. Culture, religion, diversity, local factors, local politicians, they all influence the implementation. Okay. Bureaucracy is politicized. Patrimonial tendencies are visible in the Indian bureaucracy. Okay. There is a conflict between the higher level bureaucracy and lower level bureaucracy. All India service and the state civil service. Okay, that is also one big factor. Lack of evaluation standards, lack of proper feedback mechanism. Identification of beneficiaries, data regarding all them. That is why we are going for Aadhaar and all those things. Fine. Then finally, pilferage and leakage is also one big issue. That is corruption in the administration. Okay. You can also bring the theoretical perspective, lack of comparative analysis. Okay. Now we are doing it. Narega borrowed from Brazil. Okay. Conditional cash transfer or banking correspondent model. So Jan Dhan Yojana borrowed from Kenya. Okay. Or from somewhere. So now we are doing it. but comparative policy evaluation or best practices to be borrowed in the implementation process. This has been one lacuna in India or most of the developing countries. Okay. So neither they have that much of human resource base and the skill and the technology nor the money, that they go for comparative study and then bring the best practices. That is. Okay. So you could bring all these aspects. These are the hindrances. Okay. Also the public participation, public apathy towards the implementation process. Most of the people are engaged with the representative institutions but not with the administration. Okay. So you can say that also is a big deterrent or demotivation against the performance of the bureaucracy. Okay. There is always a class divide between the bureaucracy and the society. That is one biggest problem in India. Okay. Sarkar or Mai Baap and the society. Okay. So that may also be one big hindrance. Okay. Political culture, administrative culture, because it is 15 marks, cannot bring all the things. But you can write if you want. Almond and Verba classification, the political culture is an important factor, okay, which includes the citizens and the members of the political class, okay, how they influence the implementation. So in India has a kind of culture or administrative culture. Okay, today if we talk about that, most of the public servants are basically the sycophants of the politicians. Okay, so we do not talk about a very improved, a very matured administrative culture in India. It is not there. It might have been till 1970s and 60s. After coming of social media, okay, and the mechanisms of exposing the bureaucracy and the politicians, still the level of corruption has not reduced. So what does it mean? Earlier they were probably scared of the social and the political stigma attached to a corrupt official. Today the corruption has become a kind of heroism or an act of heroism. Okay. Today the competition is regarding how much or what is the magnitude of corruption you have done. Okay. So probably we are not looking for the most corrupt today. Okay. We are basically glorifying the most corrupt. We are not punishing the most corrupt. Okay. You can see number of scams, and every bureaucrat comes with his own version that this scam I was not involved. 2G scam, Parekh, Bajal, many people. They are coming with their own view. How is it possible that at the helm of the affairs and you say that I don't know, I don't have the knowledge, I am ignorant of the policy? It is not possible. Okay. So you can say it has become like an accepted culture. Today people are happy giving the bribes, paying the bribes, and bureaucrats don't find it something unusual taking the bribes. It is very normal now. Okay. Around 5 billion, okay, there is a report by the Transparency International. If you had used the data, it would have been much better. Okay, so 5 billion is the estimated market of corruption in India, and that too mostly coming from the truckwalas, the cargo carriers, the transporters. $5 billion. Where is that money going? You see, it has wider impacts, wider ramifications. It is not a small impact. That money may be going as obviously as a disposable income. You cannot save it. Generally, you won't save it. So you'll spend in consumerism. Consumerism will increase the demand. The supply is not that much. Hoarding will take place. Something else will happen. Something else will happen. The class which actually needs the service will not get it. You can use the rigs and analyze this phenomenon. So show me the money and show me the law. I'll show you the law. Show me the man, I'll show you the law. That is what is happening in India. Okay, so these are all consequences. Fine. So in paper 2, because it is also very long. So in paper 2, the important questions which are there. Okay. We can take a few important questions. Okay, and that obviously what structure should have been there. You people who have basically studied paper 1, if they want they can go, or if they want they can sit. It's okay. Okay. See, most of the questions in paper 2. Okay. More or less, see, a major portion of paper 2 is static in nature. Okay. Even if you say it is something a change in pattern, because till last time it was more or less current based approach. Okay. But you find almost 40 to 50% questions static in nature. Okay. Mostly, if you see, there are some innovative questions which have been asked. Okay. Though you cannot say it is totally current based. Okay. But it is not coming directly from your content. Like this question. 2C. Proactive governance and timely implementation is an innovative project of union government. Discuss its features and modalities. Now, obviously, it is current affairs based. Okay, but you cannot call it current affairs because it's been now 3 years. Pragati being in news almost. Okay, so because when the moment this government came, it took number of initiatives for improving the performance of the or the implementation of the schemes. Okay, so you can say it is directly a current affairs. Pragati as a name, as a term would have been something current. Let's say last 1.5 years it is there. Okay. So discuss its features. Now this is very typical. Features and modalities. Okay. And it is asked in 10 marks. How can we write? That is a big challenge. So Pragati is a kind of platform used by the central government to monitor the implementation of schemes which are done by the center as well as the states. Okay. Flagged by the states. The term is used. Most of these schemes, national highways, border roads, basically flagged by the states. Fine. So it monitors both. It uses a technology or a technology platform. The technology uses 3 components. One is the digital data management system, one is video conferencing, and the other is geospatial technology. Okay, those 3 things are used. Why? Obviously to enhance the real-time monitoring of programs. Okay. So it is a 3-tier structure. The Prime Minister, the secretaries to the Government of India, and the chief secretaries of the states. They are linked together. Okay. Now when you are saying that chief secretaries are linked, then chief secretary, there is another question which says, is the alter ego of chief minister? Okay. It is obvious that people raise the concerns that, okay, this kind of mechanism is against the federal spirit. It may not be totally true. Because the chief secretary, while he is dealing with the administrative aspects, basically he is working on behalf of the chief minister only. So there will not be a Prime Minister Chief Minister collaboration, but Prime Minister Chief Secretary means that Chief Minister is involved. Okay. But especially political elements are not involved. Okay. What is the purpose? Okay, the purpose is threefold. That is the modality, you can say. Okay. Obviously central government is going to implement this or monitor this. Okay, there are three things. One, it is related to the implementation of the programs. Okay, so it monitors the implementation. Okay, second phase. Okay. Monitoring, to monitor the implementation, what do you need to do? Okay, you have to have real-time data. So it is saying what happens in Pragati. There is one procedure that every Wednesday, last Wednesday or Wednesday of the last week is considered as Pragati Day. Okay. So every Wednesday or 1 week prior to the Pragati Day, what happens? Every secretary and the chief secretaries, okay, what they do, they interact and they finalize the information sharing. That means they are independently sharing the information from various sources. They are also sharing the information from various sources. They share it and collaborate and discuss the agenda of the meeting. Okay. So the independence of the states is also not lost. You try to understand that it is not the secretary giving the order to the chief secretary. It is not possible. So they are independent as far as the monitoring is concerned. They are independent as far as the monitoring. What is happening? Only sharing of the information. Now once they share the information, now they collaborate together. It happens every month. Okay. So various schemes are involved. What is the benefit? The benefit is that yes, the central government, okay, because obviously central government is responsible constitutionally also for the development of the nation. So central government has taken up the responsibility which may, you can say, percolate to the lower levels also. Okay, involvement of central government or the Prime Minister, don't say central government, I'm saying Prime Minister, PM, rather than central government. So Prime Minister itself is a big deterrent against any kind of corruption, okay, or avoidance of responsibility or accountability. Okay, so that is also a benefit. Okay, the drawback is that Chief Minister is not involved, the political elements are not involved. Okay, that may raise a question. But federalism is being promoted, it is not being diverted by Pragati. Okay. How federalism is promoted? But the states are having autonomy. The state administration is enjoying freedom. It is not a restriction on the state administration, this program. Okay, it has been visualized. It is not that the secretaries bound the chief secretary. No, it is not a foundation for the chief secretary. Okay. Independently, they are implementing their programs. Methodology and procedure is decided by them. Only it is a review mechanism. So, by collaboration of the state and the center, ultimately the performance of the program increases at the lower level. So, states also benefit and center also benefits. Okay. Another question, you see, this is also a typical question. It comes more or less every year. Okay. But this question is very problematic always. Okay. Fourth C, District Planning Committee has been the weakest structure in the local self-government mechanism in India. Analyze with examples. Okay. So you have to write first what? The structure of DPC. You have to start from that 243 or Article 243, what is a ZD or something. So if you start from there, first you have to discuss the structure of DPC. Okay, and what are the powers of the state government with respect to DPC? Okay, so 4/5 of the members coming from the elected members of the panchayats and the municipality. That is what the DPC is about. Okay, but what has happened? There are co-opted members, there are experts, there are specialists. Okay, who are basically at the mercy of the state government. Mostly the state government. Okay, when the DPC is formed, now DPC should be the primary body of planning at the local level, but it does not happen. Okay. Why it does not happen? Because it is not the body which has the power to accumulate or increase the revenue or the resource. It does not decide the resource and the finance. It only plans. So what is the logic of a DPC which only plans? Okay. And in number of states, okay, it has not been constituted effectively. Okay. DPC also, or District Planning Committee, there is a second ARC is saying that there is a concern that instead of DPC, DPC should become the center of planning. But, okay, in certain states where there is a DPC or MPC in certain areas, like metropolitan areas, okay, and there are some rural areas also. So there's what there is, like Delhi. So it is taken example of Delhi. Delhi has development authorities also, MPC also, and DPC also. So second AR is saying what? Here the development authorities, their development functions must be linked to the DPC and MPC. That means the local planning bodies must include the developmental functions of developmental authority. Delhi Jal Board, Delhi Development Authority, whatever. Okay, numerous departments which are there within the Delhi government. Okay. Okay. District council in the rural areas, it is saying there must be a district council. Okay. District council should be the main decision-making body, comprising of obviously the members of the panchayats as well as the municipalities. So this district council must associate DPC as its subsidiary, as a staff or an advisory council. So DPC should act like an advisory committee to the district council. That must happen, so that representative element is high. The manner of election of the chairman, that is also left to the state governments. Okay, that also creates a problem. So DPC, this is because this is a very complicated question. Generally, students go and write the general things, but it is not true. Okay, examples can be given. Delhi as the biggest example. That how the development has suffered. You have NCR Planning Board, you have DDA, you have Delhi Jal Board, civic amenities to developmental authorities, other type of services to municipalities. Okay. Then you have a Delhi government also. So you can imagine the pressure, how much pressure on the implementation because of multiple authorities which exist. Fine. Then you see this question. Prime Minister's 6A, this is also a very innovative question. Prime Minister's awards for excellence in public administration encourage good governance initiatives. Discuss some such initiatives by the civil servants in this context. So 2006-07, regularly this award is being given. Okay. The purpose of this award is that, okay, basically it is related to certain schemes. Right now, let's say there are 5 schemes. Okay, based on this, innovative measures taken by the public servants, the government rewards them. Okay. There are 5 schemes are there. Okay. So it is there on the DOPT, everything is there. If you want, you can just refer to that. So here, what was the important part? Okay, that first, the basis of the public service or excellence in public service, what does it mean? So, what does the excellence in public service mean? Performance or ethical performance? Activism or within the confines or within the jurisdiction of the government working in more innovative manner. So there is a conflict. But we must be activist or we must follow the route of the government. So there are a number of bureaucrats who, being part and parcel of the system, they have delivered. Okay. So very innovative solution, like the amount of discretion and the authority they have and the resource they have, what they have multiplied it just by the innovation they have done. Okay. Like see, DETI, Department of Electronics, Information and Technology, winning the United Nations Public Service Award for mobile seva. Okay. That innovative. Or 2007-8, okay, the innovative method of garbage disposal and ecotourism initiated in the Nanda Devi National Park, or what is that very famous biodiversity hotspot, Valley of Flowers. Okay, that won the international award also. Okay, so likewise, many have taken the initiatives. Okay, so it cannot be just Chandrakala, okay, or it should not be just Chandrakala or somebody, okay, who are just highlighting certain mandatory administrative actions which they need to take. They are the routine functions which they are doing. Okay. So evaluation of the performance of a contractor is not something extraordinary collector is doing. Because it is collector who is doing, it might seem to be extraordinary. In reality or in normal course, it would have been done by an XCN or a JE. That is the only difference. Okay. But the overall in charge is just a collector. So the logic is that is not an activism. The activism must translate into some benefit for the system and the society both. Okay. So if the bureaucrats act in such a way, okay, that the acts which they do, they increase the overall trust of the people in the administration. And at the same time, the government also benefits in terms of some new process or new procedure. So the idea must also reflect innovation, and idea must also reflect an urgency on the part of administration to serve the people. Are you getting? So it is not just activism like that. So this question revolved around this. You will have to bring number of case studies here. Okay. There are numerous case studies which you could have brought. Okay. Implementation of GST has led to paradigm shift in the center-state relation, both financially and politically. Financial, we know, okay, no doubt, there will be initially a conflict in terms of revenue, realization of revenue, and so politically, what is the transformation? Correct. GST Council. Okay, as simple as that. Just discuss the GST Council and its role, so you give the political aspect also. Okay. And if we talk about one nation, one tax, what does it mean? Congruent is, obviously, it has come. Many of the taxes collaborated together. So, initially it would seem a violation of the financial independence of the states. Okay. It may create more burden on the vertical fiscal transfers from the center to the states, because the center will have to justify the acts of changes. Okay. But over the time, what will happen? A single tax regime, okay, will reduce number of burdens which the people used to or the traders used to face. Okay, so likewise you can write, okay, that there are other political benefits also, more collaboration, okay, more commonality in terms of tax regime and the implementation of financial models between the state and the center. Okay, more understanding. Like earlier, the center assumed that the states are generally fighting for the resource, okay, that there is some expressed political motivation, but now both can understand each other better. Why? Because they understand that what has been the reasons for loss or the gain in revenue. So technicalities could be understood much better now. Okay. If we align the Finance Commission and the State Finance Commission together, okay, so other kinds of or a better analysis of the burden because of the tax reform which has been initiated and how it should be compensated, that can also come. Okay. Local governments, they will also benefit. Okay. So you can say that the federal structures will improve. Second ARC, you see the last question also, it is quite evident every year there is a question on local governance, good governance, civil services, more or less all the themes have been covered. Okay, in fact too many questions, you can say that way. So the paper was lengthy, no doubt. Okay. So if you see 8C, And B is also a little complicated. The policy of non-action regarding the institutional mechanisms and legal provisions to eradicate corruption is a feature of Indian administration critically examined. What is the meaning of policy of non-action regarding institutional mechanisms and legal provisions? No, what is the meaning of policy of non-action regarding this and this? Basically, corruption is generally visible only in the newspapers. The government is very happy that in the real life there is no corruption in administration. Why? Because prosecution, investigation, final justice delivery is missing in the government. That's why it's to critically evaluate. Okay, so it is not true. But that is a general perception that the corruption is unearthed but not the corrupt. The government comes to know about the corruption but not the corrupt. So we can say, yes, we know there is corruption, but we don't know who the corrupt is. Okay. So policy of non-action, okay, it is not always true, but yes, it has been. Why? Start from 1947. 1947, a friend of Gandhiji wrote him a letter. Okay, that there has been a cultural change in the Indian National Congress, and now these more or less these politicians, which were obviously the statesmen earlier, okay, so now they have become politicians and they are misusing their authority for personal gains. Okay, then 1950 or 49, Gopal Swami Anger Committee came. Okay, obviously tackling the corruption, trying to understand and suggested a number of reforms. Then 50, Mundra deal. Yes, another scandal, some other scandal, some other. So right from 1947 you will find number of scandals and culminating into Harshad Mehta, Ketan Parekh and this and this and this and this. So what does it mean? It is basically what? A policy of non-action. So one argument will support it, that in spite of bringing several reforms to the law, Prevention of Corruption Act 1947, 1988, now 2013, 2015, so we are now, we are saying private corruption is part of corruption. We will punish the people who are giving the bribe. Okay. But at the same time, what we are doing? We are diluting the law. Section 13 of the Prevention of Corruption Act merged with the Section 7 of, Section 7 deals with bribery, Section 13 deals with the ignorance, the action which is not an outcome of a deliberate understanding of the action. So certain actions which the bureaucrats plead was outcome of an ignorance rather than a deliberate act of corruption. So at least you justify, at least create a deterrent by putting it separately within the provision of prevention of corruption. And what you are doing, you are trivializing Section 38, which punishes the people for corruption. And here the definition of corruption is much broader. Misuse of authority, abuse of authority. In Section 7, the definition of corruption is very narrow. It is simply the bribery. Bribery mostly visible in the form of pecuniary benefit. So what did you do? You diluted the law. Okay. Now it will be very difficult for somebody to prove, even if the power has been misused. So abuse of power may have number of consequences. But now it will be reduced to only abuse of power for bribery. Now prove where is the bribery. The bribery may not exactly mean the exchange of goods or material. Are you getting this? So they may influence you in several ways. They may provide you with various type of utilities, okay, material, non-material. Then what to do? So how will you, the prosecution will keep proving that there was a bribery or exchange of something, and the court will say, okay, show me what was exchanged. Nothing was exchanged. So they have trivialized the law. You can say that. So you can, it was basically in the context of the amendments done to the Prevention of Corruption Act. So you can say, yes, both are visible in India. On one hand, the government is doing the reforms, implementing the reforms. Amendments are being done. Statutory provisions are implemented. Bodies like CVC, CBI, Lokpal, Lokayukt, anti-corruption bodies, okay, they are all emerging. And at the same time, the scope, rate and the mode of corruption is also changing. It is quite visible. Even in the demonetization, post-demonetization also the corruption has not reduced. So you cannot say that people did not have the money and there was no corruption. It is not possible. Okay. Supply side corruption. Okay, demand side corruption, both are visible. From coercive to collusive corruption, that is visible. So you can bring that idea, that is the question basically. Okay, second ARC, 8C, second ARC makes a strong case for principle of subsidiarity. Okay, so you bring the entire local government perspective elaborately, second ARC has written a very good answer, but you cannot write everything. So you must highlight certain things, that how the second ARC feels or talks about increasing the capacity of local governments, how the structure of planning and the financial allocation should change. Okay. Third aspect, how these, what is the role of State Finance Commission, State Election Commission, Central Finance Commission and Central Election Commission, how it talks about collaboration of the roles of these two. Okay. What has been the benefit or post the emergence of the Niti Aayog, what has been the impact on the local governance, that aspect you also can make. Subsidiarity as a concept also comes with capacity building. You cannot only politically devolve the power. You need to increase the administrative capacity also. Okay, so today subsidiarity will not be just about localization, delegation, devolution. Okay, it might come with the idea of neo-localism. So you can bring the theoretical aspect also. Neo-localism means that you are leaving somebody, giving somebody freedom. Okay. But at the same time, that freedom is not detrimental, or the independence is not detrimental to that entity. So if you are making the local government free, that freedom or independence should not be detrimental. It is detrimental. Why? Because it is not capable to take independent decisions. It is not able to fend off the resources it requires. So ultimately, that kind of independence, okay, maybe analogous to the G.B. Shaw statement, man is born free and everywhere he is in chains. Agree? So you are giving independence to local governments, they don't have capacity. What does it mean? Their performance reduces. That is what ARC is saying. So you can link it with neo-localism also, that today the move is towards that. Subsidiarity is not just the complete isolation of local bodies from the other tiers of governance. Various suggestions have been given. Okay, if you had written only this suggestion, that is also enough. No need to describe what is principle of subsidiarity, simply you can start off. So all in all, if you see this question paper, it is difficult to write, no doubt, because it will take time. Okay. And some questions you might have so much of content that you might not able to frame. Okay. But if you had followed the policy of non-aggression, okay, that means obviously don't become reactive to the question. Okay. So if you had used facts, policies, content, theorist name, okay, more or less, and conveyed your idea. Okay, it is very obvious that people can score more than 270 marks average in this paper. So the highest would be somewhere around 340 to 350 in this paper. Okay. If obviously people have written it in the best, what we call the best performance. So you can score 350 in this paper, there is no problem. Okay, I am assuming that yes, paper 1, conceptually people are okay with paper 1. Okay, paper 2, anybody can write that paper if he has read the second ARC and the policies and programs. If you have not read Arora Goel also, then also you can write Chief Secretary and Prime Minister, Chief Secretary and Chief Minister, Cabinet Secretary and Prime Minister's office. Everything was in news. Okay. So if I would say average score will be 260 to 270. I mean, person who started his preparation this year can also get 250 marks in this paper. Okay. Because he will score more in paper 2. Generally paper 2 people don't get marks. Okay. Because that is so traditional, but this is not a kind of traditional paper. It is mix of static and current, but not so current. The current is very generic in nature, not very specific. If they had asked some policy, some specific program, okay, or maybe some specific change, okay, maybe some comparative perspective, then it was very difficult. Okay. If it was too general, then also it was very difficult. So neither it is very particular nor very general, so you can give some content, analyze it. Okay. Paper 1 is very simple. There is huge choice available, so it is quite obvious that people would have written. Okay. Unless obviously you are Surdas or Kalidas cutting your own. Okay, so that may be a different thing, that okay, I could not complete the paper, I wrote too much in one answer. That is obviously, these are the mistakes. Okay, that means you are not strategically prepared for the exam. Okay, so barring those mistakes, I think 250, 260 average people can score in this paper. So PubMed may, normal marks may be 300 in this. Good normal marks, 300. All the best to you. Let us see what happens.